I will serve the same. I serve as the Vice Chairman of the Indirect Tax Committee at FIEA and have been actively engaged in the field of taxation, specialized in the GST and indirect taxation matters with a focus on litigation and advisory over the past several years. It is indeed to privilege on the part of today's discussion on overview on international taxation and how to deal with the GST notices under Section 73 and 74 of the GST Act 2017. On behalf of the FIA, I extend a very warm welcome to the all esteemed delegates, distinguished professionals, and the participants who joined us. Today's session brings together some of the most accomplished experts in taxation to share practical insight and the latest development in the tax indirect international taxation and GST litigations, topics of growing importance in the current regulatory landscape. Now it's my honor to introduce our session chairman, CA Yogesh Jain sir, a distinguished chartered accountant with extensive expertise in the taxation and litigation. Also, his CA qualifications, he has enriched his professional profile with credentials such as the Diploma in Information System Audit (DISA) and Certificate in GST with the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India. He also holds a postgraduate degree in finance and taxation. Further deepening his expertise in the financial and regulatory matters. Beyond his professional achievements, CA Yogesh Jain is also actively involved in the social and community services in initiative demonstrating his commitment not just to the profession but also at the society stage. We are privileged to him here chair today's session and guide us with the insight and vision. With that, I respectfully invite CA Yogesh Jain to take over the session chairman. Over to you, Yogesh sir.
Thank you, Saurabh ji. Thank you so much. Uh, First of all, I would like to thank all the participants. Very good afternoon. I welcome you all in this knowledgeable session of international taxation by CA Ashish Garg ji and how to handle GST litigation by CA Shaifaly Girdharwal ji. Before starting this session, let me tell you about this organization, FIEA. FIEA is Federation of Indian Economic Affairs. It is the professional forum dedicated to empowering individual and organization in the field of finance, taxation, and economics. It is an open platform to enhance knowledge, development of professional skills, access to various professional resources, and networking between our professional brothers and sisters. Friends, FIA is regularly conducting webinars on various topics almost every Saturday and also publishing its monthly magazine, FIA Connect, which is available on FIA portal. And our team is regularly sending it to lakhs of professionals through emails. वेल हमारे आज के चीफ गेस्ट सीए रवि कुमार जी थोड़ा सा लेट आएंगे ड्यू टू सम ऑक्यूपाइड इन आईसीआई फंक्शन सो आई वुड लाइक टू कॉल सीए सौरभ जी टू स्टार्ट with session and call CA Ashish Garg ji to start his deliberation.
सौरभ जी आप म्यूट पे हैं आई थिंक.
Thank you, Yogesh ji. It's my distinct honor to introduce our eminent speaker, CA Ashish Garg, a highly qualified expert in international taxation. With over 13 years of experience in the corporate and cross-border taxation, compliance advisory, and litigation, Ashish sir has been regularly speaker at prestigious platforms including ICAI, IFA, ASSOCHAM, and among others. He has served as a former member of International Taxation Committee Northern Region, ICI, and is respected member of ITAT Bar Association Delhi. His contribution extended to policy formulation and thought leadership through various publications and forums. With domain expertise spanning international taxation, Ind AS, IFRS, and business valuation, along with the leadership program from Indian School of Business and IIM Ahmedabad, Ashish sir bring a rare combination of technical path and a strategic perspective. We are truly privileged to have him with us today. I now invite C. Ashish Garg sir to deliver his address and take us through his representation and latest development in international taxation. Over to you, Ashish Garg sir.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. I am asked by C. Yogesh Jain ji for my introduction to share my brief profile, and I have shared everything with him. So, good evening, everyone. I'm thankful to FIA Abhishek ji, Yogesh ji for inviting me to share my views for this contentious topic of international taxation. So while we will dwell into what is international taxation, I will tell you there is nothing called international taxation. It's all about domestic taxation. And thank you all the participants who have given the opportunity to share my views and taking time out on the busy weekend of Saturday evening to discuss this international taxation topic. So I can tell you from my experience, if I go back to that 15 years back, there was nothing called international taxation. It's all about domestic taxation only. So the term international taxation was coined when the CA Institute has started the certificate course on international taxation. I was also one of the participants who did this course in back in 2011 and 12. And thereafter, this topic has gained traction among the members because this is giving lot of opportunities to deal with the foreign clients to handle their taxation issues. Not only the transfer pricing issues, it also include the payment for various cross-border transactions, issuing 15 CACB. There are so many permanent establishment issues and all. So over the year, this subject has evolved so much, and thanks to our judiciary who has laid down so many key principles in international taxations time and again. Last week there was a Supreme Court decision in case of Hayat International laying down a key principle in case of permanent establishment. There were case laws on Formula One, Morgan Stanley, and so many case laws. Over the period, this subject has been evolved so much that India as a country itself has a lot of respect in the international tax fraternity. Indian decisions has respected a lot by the overseas judiciaries also, and they have time and again referred Indian judiciary decision into their decisions. So that is where the India has reached so far. So the topic for today's discussion, while it is difficult for me to cover into that 40-50 minutes, but I have taken a liberty from the organizers to organize a separate program for the members of FIA, uh, a kind of a refresher course, maybe a 5 to 6 days session, so that members will be abreast with what is international taxation, what are the nuances of this topic, and how to deal this in their practical life. However, I will try my best to discuss the topic with best of my ability and answer the members' queries. Now I'm presenting my screen. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, Ashish ji, बिल्कुल.
Yes. Yeah. So I told that there is nothing called international taxation. It's all about cross-border taxation. If I go back to the 1991 when India has liberalized their policies in terms of trade and practices, services and all, lot of foreign MNCs have started coming to India. They are doing businesses with Indian companies. And now the question arises how to tax that profit which is coming out of those transactions, because every company or every country wants that their income should be taxed into their contracting jurisdiction, which is the home country, and they also want to tax whatever is arising out of their country as a source of nexus of their country. So it is the thing, the taxation based on the residential status or taxation based on the source based. So this paradox is conflict is arising into the different countries, and some way or other sort it out by a double taxation tax treaties. So non-resident whose income is taxed in the source country by way of a dividend, by way of a interest, by way of a royalty or fee for technical services, source country always want to tax that income by way of withholding taxes, and resident country wants to tax that income by way of a residential status of that country. For example, if you are making any payment to a UK resident, that income is in the nature of an interest income. As per the Income Tax Act, you will levy withholding tax at the rate of 20% of that income, and that income will be again subject to tax in the hand of that non-resident in UK when they file their income tax return into UK, and UK government will again levy the tax on that income. Now the question arises whether the tax paid in India will be available to that non-resident in the UK tax return or not. Now the role of tax treaty come into the picture. The tax treaty provides the relief from double taxation. Tax treaty in itself does not create any charge, right? So tax treaty provides a mechanism how the income which is doubly taxed in two countries will be available as a credit into another country. Generally, the home country will be provided a foreign tax credit. So there are two kinds of double taxation, I would say. One is the economic double taxation and another is the juridical double taxation. So when it comes to what is economic double taxation, double taxation is the activity or income which is taxed twice in the hands of the different taxpayers. For example, if a company declaring a dividend, the income of the company is taxed in the hands of a company as a corporate income, and it is again getting taxed when it will be declared and received in the hands of the shareholder. So this is called as a economic double taxation. And whereas, what does this mean, the juridical double taxation? Juridical double taxation means a same income is taxed in the hands of the same taxpayer. For example, when we took a dividend example, if the UK government does not allow the credit of taxes paid on dividend in India, then that income will be treated as a juridically double tax in the hands of a UK resident in UK. Therefore, there is important to analyze that credit of those taxes should be available in either of the country by way of a credit method, or that India should not tax that income. That is called the exemption method. Now I'll discuss how the India taxation system is built. Our Income Tax Act 1961, which is going to be soon changed through our income tax bill. India taxes their tax residents based on the residential status criteria. And also India taxes the income of a non-resident based on the source of the income. Section 4 talks about the charge on income tax. Section 5 defines what is the scope of taxation. Section 14 defines different heads of income in which the income to be classified. And section 15 to 59 talks about the computation of income. So like I earlier said, there is no concept of DTAA creating a charge on our income. DTAA only allocate the taxing right between the two countries. It does not create a charge on our taxability. For chargeability of income, whether it is taxable in the hands of a non-resident or not, it always governed by the provisions of Income Tax Act. I can refer here the decision of Sheraton International in Delhi High Court. Delhi High Court says that if the income of a non-resident is not chargeable to tax under the Income Tax Act, then the question of invoking the provisions of Section 90 would not arise at all. What is Section 90? Section 90 provides a code in itself which talks about if the India has a tax treaty with another country, then the provisions of Income Tax Act or provision of DTAA, whichever is more beneficial, shall be applicable to that non-resident. So meaning thereby the non-resident has an option to govern by either the provisions of tax treaty or the provisions of DTAA. So here in the one screen, I try to cover all the important section which one has to keep in mind whenever they are making any foreign remittances. First of all, we need to determine the provisions of Section 4, whether it is creating a charge in India on that particular payment to a non-resident or not. If there is no chargeability as per Section 4, then I can say that that income is not taxable in India. And if income is not taxable in India, the Supreme Court in the case of G Technology Center categorically tells that then there is no requirement to withhold taxes under Section 195 of the Act. Again, we need to go to Section 5, which talks about the taxation based on the whether the payment is made to a resident, non-resident, or a person who is resident and ordinary resident. Section 6 talks about the residential status. Section 9 creates a deeming fictions. We'll discuss Section 9 in detail. So first of all, I would like to ask the members, is there any mechanism to tax the income on the citizenship basis in under the Income Tax Act?
No, I think residential status is seen
Okay.
basically.
So I would go back and refer to Wealth Tax Act 1957, which we all studied when we were in CA. So wealth tax is always based on the citizenship. And also Section 6, the government has made an amendment by Finance Act 2020, and to bring the taxation on the basis of citizenship. This is a unique provision. I will take 30 seconds to discuss. So what was happening, that there are people who are stateless people who organize their tax affairs in the manner that they are not paying taxes in any country. For few days they are living in India, for few days they are living in Hong Kong, for few days they are living in Singapore, and they are not meeting the taxation criteria of any of the countries. So Indian government by Finance Act 2020 has brought out a provision to taxing those stateless persons which are known as a high net worth individuals, and to say that if you are the citizen of India and your total income is more than 15 lakh in that previous year, other than the income from foreign sources, and you have not liable to pay tax in any other country or territory, then you are deemed to be a resident of India. So Section 6 in itself create a deeming provision for taxability of citizens of India if you are earning income more than 15 lakh rupees. This is very important provisions. So generally we determine the residential status based on the criteria that person is uh, in India for more than 182 days or not. But we also need to see this criteria also, if that person is even if non-resident in India as per the first condition, but he is a citizen of India and earning income more than 15 lakh in the previous year, which is not getting tax in any other country, then this Section 6 in itself create a deeming provision. And I'll talk about, there is one more provision in the Income Tax Act itself which talks about taxation on citizenship basis, which I'll cover in Section 9. Section 9, if talks about, is creating a deeming fiction if something is not getting taxed as per the charging section of Section 4. So Section 9 creates a chargeability income which is deemed to be accrue or arise on India. It means something which is not taxed as per the normal provisions, but it creates a charge on per Section 9 that we will assume that it is taxable in India. Section 9 subsection 1 clause 1 talks about business connection. So if a foreign company has a business connection in India, so business connection definition, these provisions are very wide. It includes significant economic presence in it to in ambit. So discussing Section 9 itself take a 1 hour, but I'll touch upon this significant economic presence in India provisions also. So it talks about if the foreign company is doing a business with India or providing services to India, and that activity in itself creates a economically presence of a foreign company in India, then that activity or presence creates a business connection or taxable presence of a foreign company in India. So, meaning thereby, if that activity or business connection is created in India, that foreign company or non-resident is liable to pay taxes in India for whatever income they earn in India. Clause 2 talks about salary income, which is deemed to accrue arise in India if it is earned in India. If someone has rendered services in India or worked in Indian company, or he is getting salary from Indian company, then it is deemed to be accrue arise in India. Clause 3, which I was talking about, the taxation on citizenship basis. For example, if a government employee is working outside India and he is getting salary from a government company in India, so he might become a resident of some third country, but he is citizen of India and he is getting salary from a government of India, then he is liable to tax in India based on his citizenship. Clause 4 talks about dividend taxability. Any dividend income declared by a Indian company paid to a non-resident outside India, then it creates taxability on source basis. Clause 4, 5, 6, and 7 This talks about taxability on the basis of source in India. It does not require whether a foreign company or non-resident has a permanent establishment or business connection in India. Irrespective, if you are making these kind of payment to your clients, then it creates a taxability in India. Now the question, the important section, section 195, we used to deal day in out in our offices, and it uses the term any sum chargeable to tax. So, like I discussed in the past, the G Technology Center decision in Supreme Court said if the payment is chargeable to tax in India, then only you are required to do a tax withholding in India. Otherwise, no. A complete no, you are not required to do a tax withholding. And how you will determine the taxability? You will go through the provisions section 4, 5, 6, 9, and then come to section 195. And now, for assume for a minute, a particular sum is chargeable to tax in India. Now the question arises, what rate of tax you should apply? For rate of tax, there is a two method of taxation for a foreign companies or non-resident in India. First is the gross rate of taxation. And the gross rate of taxation, no deduction of expenses should be allowed. So section 115A talks about gross rate of taxation. For dividend, it is 20%, interest 20%, royalty FT it is 20%. So as on date, if you ask me, Indian, as per the provisions of Income Tax Act, provides a higher rate of tax on these four stream of income vis-a-vis the provisions of tax treaty. If I talk about India US tax treaty, for FTS or royalty payment, it is 15% tax rate. Whereas as per the domestic law, it is 20% tax rate. So we will discuss in the subsequent slide whether a foreign company or non-resident in that case is required to file return of income in India or not. So I'm moving on to net basis of taxation. Section 44DA talks about net basis of taxation. If a foreign company or non-resident is earning royalty or FTS income from an Indian source or a P who is effectively connected to India, then he can file an income tax return in India based on the net basis of taxation, provided whatever the expenses he is incurring in India, it is wholly and exclusively incurred for the purpose of earning royalty and FTS income. Assume for a minute he has paid some expenses in India which is not directly related to earning royalty income or FTS income, then reduction of those expenses should not be allowed. So there is a checks and balances provision in itself provides that non-resident or foreign company is required to maintain books of account in India, and if the limit of audit is if the turnover or the receipts is over the limit under 44AB, then he is also required to do the books of account audited as per 44AB. So there is no mechanism available to the foreign company or non-resident to claim any expenses which is not directly related to royalty and FTS income. This is called a net basis of taxation. Now we discuss the provisions of section 90. So section 19, which is very important, it will create a bridge between the Income Tax Act and the provisions of DTAA, which we also called as tax treaty. So section 90 talks about if Indian government has entered into a double taxation avoidance agreement with any other country outside India or any territory outside India, then non-resident must obtain a certificate. What is that certificate? That certificate is called as a tax residency certificate. वो certificate proves that non-resident or foreign company is a tax resident of another country, and that certificate is issued by the foreign counterpart or a income tax authorities of a foreign country. And what are the mandatory particulars you will see in any foreign issued certificate or TRC? Rule 21AB talks about. So that certificate should talks about specify what is the status of that non-resident, what is the nationality of that non-resident, what is the tax identification number, fourth point, for what period that TRC is valid, and last is address. Is these five particulars are not available in any TRC, then additionally you are required to obtain form number 10F. Earlier, this Form 10F was a manual kind of system. Now, from last couple of years, government has made this 10F provisions are also electronically filed. So that 10F you will ask your pay or a non-resident to file online and give you the online electronically filed copy. So if you have this TRC or Form 10F available, then the question arises whether you will directly give the benefit of TRC even if he does not have a permanent account number in India. The question is yes. So there was a dispute in the past if the non-resident or a foreign company does not have a PAN in India. So what rate of taxes should be applicable? Whether the higher rate of TDS under Section 206 AA should be applicable. The question was yes, but there was a Rule 37 BC introduced by the government has realized this that there is an anomaly that treaty benefit is sacrosanct. Why it is sacrosanct? Because Section 90 talks about that government can enter into an agreement with any other country, and once an agreement is entered, so that agreement in itself creates a sovereign power to the government, and government cannot go beyond the tax treaty. So if the non-resident is having a TRC available with him, he is not required to obtain a permanent account number as long as that non-resident provides the following particular. What are those particular? Rule 37 BC talks about those particular. This is name, email ID, contact number, address in the country, tax identification number, and TRC. If these things are provided by non-resident, then you are not required to obtain a permanent account number. So you can apply the benefit of tax treaty or lower rate benefit. So benefit of TRC, there was huge litigation which reaches to the Supreme Court level. A classic case of a Supreme Court in the case of Azadi Bachao Andolon, 263 ITR 706. It's a very important decision. I would recommend everyone should read. So this decision, if you will might be amazed with this name Azadi Bachao Andolan. Azadi Bachao Andolan is the non-government organizations. So they filed a writ before Delhi High Court and thereafter with Supreme Court SLP that the benefit of India Mauritius tax treaty, which talks about that any gains to a Mauritius resident on transfer of a shares in Indian company should be taxable only in Mauritius. So CBDT has issued a circular in past, circular number 789, which says that if the foreign company, a Mauritius resident, has shown you a TRC, then tax authorities cannot go beyond the TRC. That tax authorities are incumbent or obliged to provide you a treaty benefit. So to challenge that circular, Azadi Bachao Andolan and that NGO has filed a writ before High Court and thereafter SLP before Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has said that the TRC issued by the Mauritius resident, once it is issued, it will become a sufficient compliance for the purpose of granting treaty benefit. So the case which was decided way back in 2003 was again and again challenged by the tax department now. And recently Delhi High Court has again confirmed in the case of Blackstone that treaty benefit cannot be denied once the TRC is issued. So the TRC is the important document whenever you are handling your client cases for foreign remittances. And additionally Form 10F, if something, those 5 particulars are not there into the TRC. Moving on to the next slide. I think says some issue. Let me just. Yes. Yeah. So now we will discuss what is the objective of DTAA. I briefly touched upon in my previous conversation that treaty always define a taxation rights between the two contracting parties. It does not create a charge in itself. It also limits limits the rate of taxation. For example, we discussed that in India, the rate of tax on dividend, interest, royalty, and fee for technical services is 20%, whereas the TT provides a lower rate of tax. That is why you will go to TT to take a benefit. TT also provides a mechanism to provide foreign tax credit. If
आशीष
somebody,
जी
yes,
आशीष जी जैसा हमने डिस्कस कर पा रहे थे तो थोड़ा सा आपसे क्षमा भी चाहूंगा मैंने आपसे पहले भी
no problem. Yes.
रवि भाई साहब सर हमारे सेंट्रल काउंसिल मेंबर फ्रॉम द ईस्टर्न रीजन इज विद अस मैं चाहूंगा योगेश जैन जी से रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं रवि भाई साहब आपको नमस्कार सादर और स्वागत है आपका
नमस्कार। और आशीष जी से मैं बहुत बहुत क्षमा प्रार्थी हूँ
Good evening,
इस
Ravi
तरह
ji.
से आपके बीच में रोकना पड़ा। वो अभिषेक
No.
जी बोले नहीं सर बीच में रोक देंगे, आप आइए। मेरे को असल में वापस दूसरी एक जरूरी मीटिंग ज्वाइन करनी है इंस्टीट्यूट की, तो अभिषेक इतना बोला तो मैंने कहा चलो ज्वाइन कर लेता हूँ।
सर आप
मैं
ज्वाइन
रोकना नहीं चाह रहा था बीच में,
सर आप
बट
जैसे
प्रेसिडेंट
लोग
साहब का आदेश भी मानना जरूरी हो गया।
सर आप जैसे लोग ज्वाइन करते हो तो वीकेंड पे डेट टू मेंबर्स बहुत मोटिवेट होते हैं।
सर अब थैंक यू रवि सर आपने बड़े प्रीसियस टाइम हमारे लिए निकाला। मैं योगेश जी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ सर हमारे साथ में है तो आप प्लीज एक बार थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ करें।
I would like to welcome our chief guest, CA Ravi Kumar Patwa ji, Central Council member. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today in this webinar. If I talk about his achievement, I think whole day will be short. CA Ravi Kumar Patwa ji is a Central Council member of ICAI. He is a vice chairman of Auditing and Assurance Standard Board of ICAI, vice chairman of Internal Audit Standard Board of ICAI, vice chairman of Women and Young Members Excellence Committee, Regional Advisory Director, Calcutta, advisor to National Council of the Institute of Internal Auditors of India, trustee and managing committee member of Hindustan Medical Institution, independent director in various companies, members of Airport Advisory Committee of a key airport in Assam. He is the president of an educational institution established way back in 1863. Uh, he has conducted a training session for officials of CAG and directors, general managers of public sector undertakings and industrial units like BRPL, financial institution like NEDFI. He has delivered lecture to chartered accountant, cost accountants, company secretaries, tax professionals, seminars, conferences, workshop all over the country. And he is a very socially active person and holds important position in many organizations. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
थैंक यू योगेश जी। और मैं आप सबको बताना चाहूंगा अगर जब भी मैं इन पर्सन रवि सर से बहुत बार मिला हूं, और जो प्यार वो सभी मेंबर्स को देते हैं और शायद इसीलिए वो हमारे सेंट्रल काउंसिल मेंबर हैं और बीइंग ईस्टर्न रीजन के चेयरमैन रहते हुए उन्होंने बड़े सारे इनिशिएटिव लिए और इट्स अ रियली प्रिविलेज ऑफ ऑल ऑफ अस एंड द FIEA एज वेल दैट वी हैव रवि सर विद अस। ओवर टू यू रवि सर।
थैंक यू अभिषेक, थैंक यू योगेश जी फॉर सच ए elaborate introduction जिसकी कोई जरूरत शायद नहीं थी. Whatever, having said that, my heartfelt congratulations to Federation of Indian Economic Affairs for conducting such a program, such a webinar covering both the aspects of taxation, the direct taxes and the indirect taxes. You know, this kind of organizations do help the professionals for sure. But then for professionals, there are so many other avenues, including the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and other professional institutes where they can go and sharpen their knowledge and skill. But then beyond the professionals and beyond helping the professionals, these organizations also help in nation building. As the name itself suggests, that the organization does not restrict itself to organizing webinars or to serving the professionals only. So my kudos to the organization and kudos to the president, Mr. Abhishek Jain. Now, you know, Ashish ji, I beg your pardon for stopping you in between. You have been deliberating very well on international taxation. In fact, for last 2 minutes or so, I just wanted to hear. That is why I did not switch on my video. So I was hearing you for the last couple of minutes. And I'm sure that in the second session, Shaifaly ji will also definitely deliberate very well and will educate the August gathering. The day is for both of you. You all are also doing a human service to the profession and to the nation by, inculcating knowledge to the professionals and by sharing whatever you know. The biggest strength of our profession is that we have, I mean the CA profession specifically, that we have more than 1,000 people who are working day in and day out for the development of profession and the professionals de novo, without and pro bono. So without taking any remuneration, without taking any fee, they're giving their time at the study circle level, at the chapters level, at the branch level, and then of course the regional council and the council level. With these words, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I should not utter much because the utterances today should be from Ashish ji and Shaifaly ji. With these words, I conclude. Once again, congratulating the Federation of Indian Economic Affairs and all the office bearers of it, including the President Yogesh Jain. Thank you very, very much, friends.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your precious time. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Ravi ji, for enlightening us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Ravi ji, for your kind words.
All my pleasure. आप जारी रखें, आशीष जी.
Ashish ji, please continue with the session.
Let me present my screen again. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah. So we discussed about the provisions of income tax, how we need to go through it in our life while making the payments to non-residents. So now moving on to the provisions of double taxation avoidance agreements. So is my screen visible? Yes, I think. Yes, yeah. So we discussed that DTAA does not create any charge. It only defines or allocates the taxing right between the two countries. It also limits the rate of taxation. And thirdly, the important part is that it also provides mechanism how the foreign tax credit should be available to the non-residents or foreign companies. So there are various modes of allowing the foreign tax credit. Number one, that the taxing country would exempt the entire income from the purview of the taxation. So this is called as a exemption method, and another method is called the allowance of foreign tax credit, which is be done by the resident country. For example, if some income is double tax in the contracting state 1 and resident state country is contracting state 2, so resident country will allow the credit of foreign taxes paid in the contracting state 1. And the fourth part is when there is a dispute arises between the two countries. So how those dispute will be resolved in the international or cross-border scenarios. So there is a mechanism of filing application before the competent authorities, which is called as MAP filing. And there are provisions relating to the exchange of information between the two countries. So I will help you to lay down what is the typical structure of the tax treaties and how the various articles has been grouped together. So in these slides, I'll try to cover up what are the model tax convention on which the Indian tax treaties or treaties of different countries are based out. The first and foremost important is OECD model conventions. So OECD is the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development Countries. It has various members. While India is not the member of OECD, but India always takes a persuasive value of whatever the provisions come under this convention. Second is the UN Model Convention. Third is the US Model Convention, which will talk about what is US Model Convention. Whether there is an India model or not, we will discuss. And last is the multilateral instruments. So if I talk about what is OECD Model Convention, so OECD Model Conventions provides a taxation mechanism which is more likely leaning towards resident-based taxation. So it says that there should not be any taxes based on the source of one country. It always to be a tax on the residential based taxation, whereas the UN model supports a taxation on source based. For example, India has a hybrid system of taxation. So India, being a developing country, India always says that the income of a resident of its country will be taxed, resident of Indian country will be taxed on its global income, whereas if something is accrue or rise as a source from India, so India will also tax that income also. So India has maintained its stand that it will tax on both bases. However, most of the Indian tax treaties are more leaning towards UN model conventions. And there is a concept of capital exporting countries, capital importing countries. So if I can talk about what is the difference between the two, so capital importing countries are generally the developing countries who brings lot of technology from outside India to do a manufacturing in their country, whereas capital exporting countries are those countries, for example United States, Germany and Japan, who are developed countries who already have everything available in their country, and they want that technology should go out and they will earn income out of this. So we discussed about OECD and UN model. What is the difference between them? When it comes to the US, so US does not follow any model. It neither follow a OECD model nor follows a UN model. US has their own model. So the treaties with US will always based on the US model convention. US has their technical guide and explanation exists. So whereas most of the provisions are based on the OECD and UN model, but US always tax as per their own tax conventions. And the major difference between the US and other model is that US has a concept of taxing to its resident on citizenship basis criteria, which generally countries taxes on a residence basis criteria, whereas US taxes is on a citizenship based criteria. Last is the multilateral instrument. If I go back to 2016-17, that was the time that most of the countries, developed countries, has realized that their share in the global taxes are getting low. So they need to do something, and they come out with a solution called as BEPS action plan. So OECD has released 15 action plans, and as per the estimates of 2017, annually there is a tax loss of around 100 to 200 billion dollar on account of artificially arranging the tax affairs in such a manner that none of the countries is getting its fair share of taxing rights. So they have devised a instrument called multilateral instrument, because it is very difficult to change each and every tax treaty which a country has entered. For example, India has entered almost 94 tax treaties as on date. So if India is going to renegotiate its tax treaties with another country, then it's take a whole lot of process, and it would be very cumbersome and difficult process through diplomatic channels. So countries had decided to come to a model instrument where they will agree certain minimum standards which every country has to follow. So that minimum instrument or multilateral instrument will be notified into their domestic through domestic tax law, and it will have an impact to change the bilateral tax treaties. Apart from the model tax treaties or tax convention, India has entered into an exchange of information tax treaties with certain countries. I think there are 21 countries with India has entered a exchange of information network. So if you can able to recall in the past, CBDT time and again has shared the list of countries who are non-cooperative. For example, in past they have issued a Cyprus as a status of a non-cooperative country. So if you are doing any transaction or business with Cyprus countries, the India will always levy a higher rate of tax. Moving on to the what is the typical structure of tax treaties. So OECD I has chosen as a example to discuss the typical structure. So chapter 1 of any tax treaty talks about scope of a convention, which contains two articles. Article 1 is persons covered and Article 2 is a taxes covered. Like we read a Income Tax Act, there is a title, short title, definitions and all. Similarly, tax treaty also covered into the different chapters, and that chapter contains articles. So chapter 2 covers various definition, general definition, what is resident, what is permanent establishment. Thereafter, chapter 3 covers taxation of income. It covers in it embeds income from immovable property, how the income of a non-resident from immovable property to be taxed. Similarly, for business profit, shipping, inland waterways, transport and airport, associated enterprise, dividend, interest, royalties, capital gains, income from employment, director fees, entertainers, and sports person. So there are different articles which talks about how the taxation should happen as per the tax treaty. Chapter 4 talks about taxation of capital, Article 22, which means if the person is selling their immovable property or shares or interest in any capital rights, then taxation should happen as per the Article 22. Article 23A talks about exemption method or credit method, which we discussed that foreign tax credit. So there are two methods we discussed, exemption and credit. Chapter 6 talks about special provision, non-discrimination. Article 24 is important. Let's discuss about this for a minute. So the tax treaty, the way they have built, so it says that there should not be a discrimination between the non-resident and residents. So what is that discrimination? So it says that when you are making payment from one resident to another resident as per the domestic law, so whatever the tax rate as per your domestic law is applicable, the same treatment should be given to a payment while you are making payment to a non-resident. So there is a classic case of a Gupta versus Delhi High Court, which defines that tax treaty should be pari materia with the domestic tax laws. So if we read the definition of royalty FTS as per the domestic tax laws, we will find that so by and large those definitions or provisions are similar as provided under the tax treaties. So if there is any non-discrimination through which a non-resident is getting overcharged or overburden of taxes, then that non-resident can invoke provisions of Article 24 to get the same treatment as per the domestic laws to another residents. We discussed Article 25 in case of any dispute arises in interpretation of tax treaties or to get the benefit of tax treaties is not clearly coming out, then non-residents can invoke the mutual agreement procedure with the help of the competent authorities. Article 26 we discussed exchange of information. Yeah, so moving on to the next part. So when you are reading tax treaties, how you will apply it? So first of all, we discuss the provisions related to Indian Income Tax Act. Now, when it comes to the tax treaty, the number one step is you need to first identify whether the tax treaty should be applicable into that particular case or not. If it is applied, then we go to second step. What is the nature of income? We discussed that income is divided into different natures: business income, royalty income, dividend income, interest income. So you will identify what is the nature of income. Once you will identify the nature of income, then the question arises which article to be applied. So you will read the provisions of relevant article. Thereafter, in that article, you will see where the taxing rights to be assigned, whether it is assigned to the source state or it is assigned to the resident state. For example, Article 13 of India Netherlands Treaty talks about that any sale of shares, the gain arising will be taxable in the resident country. So the taxing right will be given on any sale of shares, if even if it is for the Indian company, will be taxable in the hands of a non-resident in Netherlands. So you need to read where the taxing right is assigned, whether it is with India on a source basis or it is with the resident country on a residential status basis. And last 5 is how the income is calculated. So for calculation of income, you will again go back to the domestic tax laws, and for identification of rate, you will follow the process we discussed 115A and all. And then if that rate is higher than the rate provided under the tax treaty, then you will invoke the provisions of tax treaty. Moving on to the another area, which while I am not conversant with the 15 CACB, because we generally don't decide on the what 15 CACB it is handled by our clients. But briefly touching upon the 15 CACB, 15 CA is divided into the 4 parts. It is the form which we use to file while we are making payment to a non-resident or foreign companies. Part A talks about when the payment does not exceed 5 lakh rupees, you are not required to obtain a chartered accountant certificate in 15 CB. Whereas Part B covers those transactions where your client has given you a certificate under 197 or an order from assessing officer under 195, then you need to follow the procedure given in Part B. In Part C, it is applicable when something is chargeable to tax. When your payment is chargeable to tax and remittance is more than 5 lakh, then you are required to obtain a certificate from a chartered accountant from 15 CB. And Part D is covered about a list of transactions where which is not chargeable to tax, then you require to Part D be filled in. So in the table below, I have covered the provisions of penalties if there is any default in compliance or payment related to the non-resident. If there is a default or putting a incorrect information in 15 CACB, bold highlighted text section 271I talks about a penalty of 1 lakh rupees. So 1 lakh rupees is the minimum penalty in this section. If there is any default or furnishing any incorrect information in 15 CACB form, then you will supposed to get penalty of 1 lakh rupees. Whereas there are other provisions for disallowance of expenditure under 40 AIA, withholding tax proceedings under 201, interest on late payment and all. But 271 I is the important provision for us to keep in mind. How much time we have? I think so. 3 minutes. If I'll go to 5 to 10 minutes, I think.
Yes, Ashish, 5 minutes. Yes.
Okay. So now I will cover the important judicial precedents. So I talked about the Hayat International decision, which came last week only. So this is the important decision. If anyone get chance to read it, and it has far-reaching ramifications to same set of business models. So what happened in this case? Hayat International is a Dubai-based company which has a contract with Indian hotels. So what they used to do, they entered into a long-term 20 years contract with Indian companies or Indian hotel to supervise their functions into the finance services of everything they are doing in India. It is covered by their agreement, which is called a SOSA agreement. Matter reaches to the Delhi High Court whether all these activities which Hayat is performing in their day-to-day operations of Indian companies or Indian hotels will amount to a permanent establishment of fixed place P of a Hayat in India or not. Delhi High Court said that because due to your activities in India or Indian hotels, your employees is coming to India and you have a long-term contract with the Indian company. So that operation or activities in itself creating a permanent establishment in India. So Hayat did not satisfied with this decision. They filed a appeal before Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has upheld the decision of Delhi High Court, and now decision has become final. So in all our client cases, wherever there is a long-term contract with a foreign company has with Indian company, and that activities with the of a foreign company are in the nature which is giving more control supervision in the hands of a foreign company, So those activities will create a permanent establishment of foreign company in India. Another important decision on the concept of most favored nations. So let's discuss what is most favored nations. Well, we know that most favored nation is a concept under the indirect tax laws also, which provides a favorable rate of tax to the countries which we have entered with the most favored nation clause. So Indian tax treaties also provide a MFN clause, and it provides either a lower rate of tax or a restricted or limited scope of taxation. So in the case of Nestle SA, Supreme Court has decided even if the particular tax treaty has a MFN clause which provides a lower rate or a lower or limited scope of taxation, but that clause has to be notified under the Indian tax law through the CBDT. If that notification does not happen, then you will not get the benefit automatically. So that notification under required under section 90 subsection 1. So this is the very important decision. If you see in any tax treaty, there is a MFN clause existing for royalty, FTS, and different nature of payments. Generally, this clause is a part of a protocol to the tax treaty. And then again, then you will see whether that clause is notified by the CBDT under section 90 subsection 1. If it is not there, then you will not invoke the benefit of a MFN clause automatically. It requires notification, then only you will invoke. Third and last most important decision in case of engineering analysis against Supreme Court, if that issue arises in this case, there are in your case also you will see there are lot many payments we are making to Microsoft or different licenses for using into our businesses. The question arose before Supreme Court whether payment for software license cost to a non-resident would liable to a tax in India or not. Supreme Court went into the end user license agreement, which we install a software, we will generally tick. Supreme Court get into that law end user license agreement, and they said this is the standard agreement that these companies entered with their customers, and because this is a standard agreement, you are only getting the right to use the license software. You did not get right into that license itself. So any payment is made towards this right to use of a licensed software is in the nature of a use of copyrighted article, not the copyright itself. Therefore, there is that payment does not be classified or qualified as a payment for royalty. So while this decision has so many nuances, but the key point is that if you are making any payment for use of any copyrighted article, so it is to be treated as a sale of article. It's not a sale of right in that article. So in that case, it is not qualified as a royalty, and you are not required to withhold any taxes. This is a favorable decision in favor of taxpayers, and this opens so many interpretations and possibilities for a litigation in India again.
आशीष जी, थैंक यू सो मच. अगर हमारे किसी ऑडियंस की किसी पार्टिसिपेंट का कोई क्वेश्चन है तो एक बार वो आशीष जी से बिल्कुल ले सकते हैं उसको.
Yogesh ji, if there is no question from audience in chat box, I have a few questions from audience which they can answer through our interactive quiz.
Okay.
Yeah. The first question is whether surcharge and cess is applicable after applying the tax rate as per 115A. So we discussed that 115A provides tax rate of 20% dividend on so many incomes. So whether you are required to apply surcharge on cess on that income also? You will think over it. Let me put up the next question. So next question is, if the income is tax is duly deducted 115A of a non-resident, whether in that case non-resident is not required to file return of income in India or not. In other words, if you have deducted a tax withholding, made a tax withholding 115A of an income of a non-resident, so whether that non-resident is required to file income tax return in India or not. You will put your answer in the chat box. So let me show the answer, being conscious to the time. So answer to the first question is, you are required to apply surcharge and cess over the rate prescribed under the 115A.
Right.
And the answer to the second question is yes, the non-resident is not required to file tax return in India if the tax is duly withheld as per the provisions of 115A. 115A as per subsection 5 provides a relaxation to a non-resident for not filing any return of income in India if taxes has already been paid under the Act. Now, thank you so much. Over to the organizers. If there are any question, we can discuss on offline, and you can send it to me.
सौरभ जी
Thank you so much.
सौरभ जी शायद एक क्वेश्चन है राहुल मल्होत्रा जी का, आप
Yes.
एक बार ले
Yes.
सकते हो चैट बॉक्स में।
सर एक क्वेश्चन आया हुआ है हमारे पास. While filing ITR, we need to choose section 90 or 98 to claim tax relief in India USDT AA.
Section 90 talks about if there is a tax treaty in India has with another country. For US, India has a tax treaty, so we need to choose section 90.
Okay, Rahul ji, have you got your answer? Yes. Any other question? If not, we are moving towards the. Thank you, Ashish, for responding the query and such the clarity on and depth analysis for the international taxation. And we would love to continue due to the time constraint. We also include this segment, and you session will truly enriching and bridge complex international taxation concept and real world application. And also the recent case study of Hayat Palace, which will also helpful for all the audience will decide on the international taxation. And on the behalf of FIEA, we all are participants, and I extend our sincere gratitude for your time, knowledge, and valuable insights. We look forward to bring hearing more on you in future. As a token of love, we will like to so give you one certificate as a token of love, and also we will share the hard copy of the certificate on your address. This is the.
Thank you so much, Saurabh ji.
And this is the certificate. Is it visible to all of you?
Thank you, Saurabh ji. Thank
Yes,
you,
yes.
Abhishek ji. Thank you, Yogesh ji, for inviting me in this session. I'm very grateful to share my views to all the audience. So I would request the FIA team to keep continue these kind of sections, and wherever my support is required, I am a call away. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ashish. Thank you. Neha ji. Now I would like to invite Neha ji to call CA Shaifaly ji.
Thank you so much, CA Ashish Garg, for that in-depth perspective on international taxation. This is your co-host, CA Neha Jain, a practicing chartered accountant, partner in Jain Agrawal and Company. Now it's time to move to the second segment of our session. I'm honored to introduce CA Shaifaly Girdharwal, a powerhouse in the field of indirect taxation and a trusted advisor on GST litigation and consulting at Ashwa Legal, a firm with a nationwide presence. A chartered accountant since 2008, she is not just a practitioner, but also a prolific contributor to the GST domain. She has authored over 200 articles, published a GST book with Taxman, and her YouTube channel has garnered over 3 lakh plus subscriber with over 1 billion views, making her a familiar name to many tax professionals and businesses. She has trained professionals at top corporates like HUL, NTPC, and Varun Beverages, as well as officials from NACIN and Indian Air Force. Today, she will help us decode a very practical and pressing topic, how to deal with GST notices under Section 73 and 74. Let's warmly welcome CA Shaifaly Girdharwal. Over to you, CA Shaifaly Girdharwal.
Shaifaly ji.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Yes. So first of all, I would like to thank all of you for this wonderful event, and I would like to thank ma'am for giving such a good. It is very relevant. It was relevant since the day one, and it will be relevant for a very long period. Typical time litigations there in GST. So the topic is about the notices. The notices under the two different sections, 73 and 74. So I can say that this is one of the most discussed, can say it is discussed a lot, and the side where a lot of more discussion is required. So complicated and be a bread of butter of lot of the consultants here. So most of the people in our audience are the chartered accountants, and there is one basic difference, that as a chartered accountant, we are not very much conversant with the litigation because it was never being the part of our syllabus, and it was never being, I will say, properly taught during our studies. So many of us become the litigation consultants, but we actually never had I will say, a formal education of the litigation, right? So that's definitely a challenge to a lot of us. We handle it, and we handle it very properly. But the thing is that chartered accountants, accountant part, which is already being feeded into our mind, sometimes it's very difficult to, pull it out of ourselves, right? So every time department, like if there's any notice, information is required, our first will be to rush to our computers and make all of those reconciliation and, draft all of those informations which are required by the department. So in the today's session, my goal will be that I will be trying to tell you something which maybe should be the part of a litigant if you want litigation, not being the part of the whole syllabus. So something maybe we will not be going to read these sections or interpreting these sections, but we will just try to understand this whole craft of litigating, not just for the notices, for the appeal, and what I believe lot of us should be trying to enter into the tribunal also. We must be dreaming that tribunal will start, and we will also start our spin in the tribunal. So for that matter, I will start from some of the basics, which are actually basics but are very important. Then we will move forward and we will try to understand the craft of litigation. We will try to understand what should be our responses, and while we are replying to a notice, what we are exactly doing. So some fundamental concepts are required to be very clear in our mind, and they are going to help a lot. See, because litigation is a very beautiful combination of concepts plus practicality. So not the concept will be going to give you the 100% justice, and not just the practicality, but you need to comprehend both of them. So we need to read the law, we need to read a lot of judgments, interpreting them. We are making a lot of write-ups on them. But after that, what we are exactly doing, what's our exact role, that will be the first thing we will have to understand, and everything else will come after that first and primary understanding of our role. So whenever there will be a notice, so I will try to keep it a little interactive with all of us. So first and foremost thing we need to understand, whenever there is a notice, what is our role for a particular notice? Yes, we are replying them, we are litigating for the applicants, for our clients, but we need to understand one thing, that reply to a notice doesn't mean that we are like an advocate in a court who has all the evidences of the world, and ultimately he's going to prove the genuineness beyond doubt of his client. While we are making our first reply, our goal should be to strengthen the case with the limited evidences we have, right? So as far as I understand, that most of the litigation we have learned it from the movies, from the advocates, from the courtroom scenes. So in the courtroom, sometimes the lawyer is not just litigating. What they're doing a full-fledged investigation, a CBI, CID investigation. So the investigating parties are not being able to put all of those evidences, but lawyer is suddenly coming, and lawyer is saying, no, you are saying this guy was died, but actually he's alive. See, he's in the court. So you need to understand, this is not the part of litigation at all, right? What our role is, first thing we need to understand from the client side what they exactly have in their hands. And now there is one question to understand: are we representing every client, every person who is coming to us, or are we representing only the genuine people? So the lawmaker itself, the constitutional itself, has given the right to represent yourself in front of law to every person, whether it's a murderer, whether it's a rapist, whether it's a tax litigant, like whosoever that person is. First, most important thing we need to understand, no matter how open and shut case it seems to be, every person has a right that all of the evidences, all of the things, all of the statements and everything should be put together. Then it should be checked with the provision. So if someone is a murderer, you cannot say I will shoot him because he's a murderer. Because first you need to understand what evidences we have, what law is saying. Before that, jumping onto a conclusion, never. And when you will litigate in the taxation matters, you will find all kind of cases. Sometimes a genuine person may not be having the proper evidence, and sometimes a non-genuine person will be having all evidences of the world. So most of the litigation in GST is on the basis of differences. So differences is a word which fascinates the department. Differences, the whole AI system of the department, it is very fascinated with differences. Differences in annual return with 3B, there is a notice. Difference between GSTR 1 and 3B, there is a notice. Difference between GSTR 1 and 3B, there is a notice. Difference between 2B and 3B, there is a notice. So 90% of the notices are for differences. They are not for the true tax liability. They are for the differences. And the one very important thing which is department is required to understand is not every difference will translate into a tax liability. So that's a very funny, I will say, conversation, that they think their 100% focus is on differences. Sometimes I feel like if they only check the bills of Zomato, they only check the bills what Swiggy is issuing, what Zepto is issuing, they can actually have very huge, big cases in their hand. But their difference is not the thing. They will have to analyze, they will have to understand the provision, they will have to read the provision. So sometimes I feel it's very obvious, like what they are doing, what Rapido is doing. Like every bike without a commercial number plate is doing the commercial work. Every guy without a commercial number plate is delivering the goods on their vehicles. So that everything they don't want to see. What they want to see, there is a 7 rupees difference. So some days back, I saw a notice where there was a 7 rupees difference and they issued a 74 section notice for 7 rupees. So I was unable to understand what kind of person is going to do a fraud for 7 rupees. What kind of person with crores of the turnover will be going to do a fraud of 3,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, 500 rupees? So all of these numbers, I have seen the notices for all of these numbers, right? So I will say that litigation is very interesting actually, right? So once a notice is with you, I will just try to make a story around it. So your client is coming to you and it has shown you a notice. Sir, this is the notice. So tell me what can happen. So what will be the first question we will ask to him? One thing is very sure in every case, that we always assume that he don't want to pay the tax. He is not saying I don't want to pay the tax, but this is our assumption that he don't want to pay the tax. So our first thing will be, oh, you don't need to worry. But what should be our first question is, do you want to pay the tax? This will also help you in fees negotiation. Because while he is assuming that you have already assumed that tax is not payable. See, what we assume that he is coming to a consultant because he don't want to pay the tax. That's right. Right. And that's why sometimes we feel hesitant in quoting the fees. Because in many cases, we are not sure. Although we reply each and every notice. So, आज तक के कैरियर में पहले ये बताओ कितने लोगों का ऐसा हुआ है कि कोई नोटिस लेके आपके पास आया एंड यू सेड कि नहीं बिल्कुल सही टैक्स तो लगा रखा है डिपार्टमेंट ने. आज तक हुआ है कभी ऐसा बताओ?
नहीं.
आपने ऐसा बोला कि सही तो लगा रखा है, इतना ही तो लगना चाहिए. हाँ क्या रियल एस्टेट का, हाँ ठीक है भाई, अनसोल्ड इन्वेंट्री है तो होना चाहिए रिवर्स से, सही तो लगा रखा है. Have we ever said in our career कि नहीं ठीक तो है? We never said that. And of course, we are litigators. We don't even need to do that. So, but our first question should be to the client. Sir, 30 लाख की डिमांड है आपकी, आप पे करना चाहते हो क्या टैक्स? अब वो जो ना हमने एज्यूम कर रखा है ना, वो ना पहले उससे बुलवाओ, right? And as soon as he will say no, he will understand that first thing is there is no 100% surety. Second thing is if somebody is taking up this case, it's a difficult case, it means they will be charging for it. So they are charging for their craft. तो आपको फीस नेगोशिएट करने में यहीं से इजी हो जाएगा. फर्स्ट थिंग इज. सेकंड थिंग इज, आउटकम के लिए आपको उसको कोई श्योरिटी देने की जरूरत नहीं, और श्योरिटी तो हम खैर दे भी नहीं सकते किसी भी चीज के लिए. इनफैक्ट हम लोग ये कंफर्म कर सकते हैं कि ऑर्डर तो अगेंस्ट आएगा, बिकॉज एज फार एज एडजुडिकेशन इज कंसर्न, वी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड ऑफिसर्स आर बायस्ड. अभी लिटिगेशन में उतना तो सबको समझ आ गया हो गया है. नहीं है कि बायस्ड? आप बताओ व्हाट यू हैव एक्सपीरियंस्ड. ऑफिसर कभी ऐसे कहते कि नहीं तुम्हारा तो भाई सही केस है, चलो ठीक है छोड़ देते हैं. वैसे जेन्युइन केस छोड़ने की भी फीस है, और नॉन जेन्युइन तो छूट ही नहीं सकता. सो व्हाट दे से, फीस तो इसलिए कि जेन्युइन है, कुछ हो सकता था. नॉन जेन्युइन का तो कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता है कि नहीं. सो आर दे बायस्ड और नॉट? दे आर एक्चुअली बायस्ड, राइट. अब ऐसे इंसान के सामने मैं अगर सोचूं कि मैं तो यार ठीक है बहुत अच्छी मैं थीसिस लिख के लाऊंगी इसके नोटिस के ऊपर, आई विल गोइंग टू कोट ऑल ऑफ द जजमेंट्स, ऑल ऑफ द केसेस, पढ़ना ही नहीं है उसने पढ़ना ही नहीं है. सबसे बड़ा रीजन क्या है इस चीज का, कि वो हमारे अगेंस्ट ऑर्डर पास करेगा, उसका कुछ नहीं होने वाला. बट जब वो हमारे अगेंस्ट ऑर्डर पास करता है, अगर हमने क्लाइंट का ओरिएंटेशन, उसका थॉट प्रोसेस पहले से सेट नहीं करके रखा हुआ है, वो जरूर आपको फोन करके परेशान करने वाला है. सर ऑर्डर पास हो गया. एंड 74 के केसेस में दिस इज इवन आई विल से मोर डेंजरस, बिकॉज 74 में ऑर्डर आते ही 30 दिन के बाद आपकी पेनल्टी 100%. तो नोटिस के बाद तो क्लाइंट आराम से बैठा रहेगा कि कोई बात नहीं 50% तक की बात थी, लेकिन जिस दिन ऑर्डर आ गया अब उसको दर्द है पेट में कि मैं जमा कर दूं. अदरवाइज तो क्या है, 5 करोड़ का 10 करोड़, 2.5 करोड़ का 5 करोड़, बड़ी लगती है फिगर. बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली सी, जिसने फेक इनवॉइस पे ले रखा है उसने अल्टीमेटली आईटीसी तो रिवर्स कर देगा, क्योंकि आईटीसी तो उसका जेन्युइन था ही नहीं. ठीक है, इंटरेस्ट भी चलो पे कर देगा. सबसे ज्यादा दुखता क्या है, पेनल्टी. क्लाइंट के हिसाब से स्पेसिफिकली इन द 74 केसेस उनकी सबसे बड़ी जो पेन पॉइंट है वो है समहाउ इफ यू कैन सेव द पेनल्टी. ठीक है, इफ दे वांट टू एक्सेप्ट इट. अगर कोई बंदा ऐसा है कि भी एक्सेप्ट ही नहीं कर रहा, तो मैं यहाँ पे आपको ये बोलूंगी देयर आर बोथ काइंड ऑफ केसेस. देयर आर जेन्युइन केसेस आल्सो, देयर आर नॉन जेन्युइन केसेस आल्सो. बट व्हाट आई वांट टू से दैट व्हेन समबडी इज कमिंग टू यू, वी आर नॉट लाइक अरे तुमने ये क्यों किया, ऐसे कैसे कर लिया तुमने. नो, आवर थिंग इज, मुझे मेरे हाथ में ये 4 चीजें मिली है मेरे क्लाइंट से. भाई क्लाइंट हैज गिवन कि भाई सर मेरे पास ईवे बिल है, मेरे पास ये है, मैंने अकाउंट से पेमेंट किया है, ये नहीं किया है, जो भी कुछ है. ठीक है, मेरी स्टेटमेंट रिकॉर्ड की गई थी, स्टेटमेंट आपको आ गई. तो आपको अगर देखो लिटिगेशन आएगा तो आपके पास जो है बिगड़े हुए ही केसेस ज्यादा आएंगे. जो बहुत सुधरे हुए केसेस हैं उसके लिए तो बहुत लोग हैं ऑलरेडी. ठीक है, तो केस तो ऐसे ही आएंगे कि सर मेरा स्टेटमेंट भी रिकॉर्ड कर लिया था, स्टेटमेंट रिकॉर्ड कर लिया तो बहुत अच्छी बात है. किसी और के पास जाएंगे तो सीधा वो ये बोलेंगे कि भाई इस केस में कुछ है नहीं. आप कंसल्टेंट के पास जाओगे कि इस केस में कुछ है नहीं, स्टेटमेंट इज ऑलरेडी रिकॉर्डेड, व्हाट्सएप चैट इज ऑलरेडी अटैच्ड विद द एससीएन. सो दे आर डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ एससीएन. जो छोटे मोटे एससीएन आते हैं 1 पेज के 2 पेज के, वहां अलग बात है. डीजीजीआई की जो शोकॉज नोटिस आते हैं वो बड़े प्यारे होते हैं, बिकॉज एवरीथिंग इज वेल क्राफ्टेड. उसमें अगर आप कमी निकाल के दिखा रहे हो देन यू आर एक्चुअली एन एक्सपर्ट. बाकी लोगों का तो ठीक है, जो 1 पेज का 2 पेज का मतलब यार तुमने इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं दी, मेरे को ये प्रोवाइड नहीं करा, वो प्रोवाइड नहीं करा, ठीक है. बट व्हेन देयर इज अ नोटिस फ्रॉम डीजीजीआई, सो प्रोवाइड नहीं करने वाली बात ही नहीं होगी. वो इतना प्रोवाइड कर देते हैं, इतना प्रोवाइड कर देते हैं. 250 उनके क्लाइंट है तो 250 क्लाइंट की लिस्ट प्रोवाइड कर देते हैं. पूरी राम कहानी बताएंगे कि ऑन फला फला डेट रेड हुई थी इनके यहाँ पे, रेड में हमें ये मिला वो मिला. अब अलग अलग तरह के केसेस होते हैं. तो भैया ये उनके एम्प्लॉय से हमने बात की, उनके एम्प्लॉय ने देखो व्हाट्सएप चैट दिखाई है कि मैं तो सिर्फ बिल दे रहा था, घुस वगैरह कुछ भी नहीं गई थी आगे से. ठीक है, व्हाट्सएप की चैट भी उन्होंने वहां पे अटैच कर रखी है. जो बंदा आपके पास आ जा रहा है, पता चला 2 साल पहले खुद स्टेटमेंट दे चुका है कि यस आई वाज डूइंग द फ्रॉड, मैंने किया है. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे आके अपना क्या हो जाता है, नोटिस पढ़ के हाथ खड़े. सो एवरीथिंग इज क्लीन एंड क्लियर, बट एवरीथिंग इज नॉट क्लीन एंड क्लियर. जेन्युइन केसेस में भी इट्स वेरी कॉमन for the DGGI to force them to give a statement. And DGGI जब भी स्टेटमेंट लेता है तो वो फोर्सफुल ही लेते हैं. आप कुछ लिखना चाहो या नहीं लिखना चाहो वो आपसे लिखवा लेंगे. तो कभी ये सोच के मत जाना कि मेरा क्लाइंट तो कुछ लिख के नहीं आएगा, चाहे वो कितनी भी बड़ी तोप हो. जब सुबह से शाम तक वहां बैठा रहेगा ना और उसको लगेगा कि उसी के सामने किसी और बंदे को 2 चपाट पड़ गए हैं. So any respectful person, specifically when they are honor, and that's why they talk to honors. सो डीजीजीआई का एक बड़ा क्लीन ये चीज होती है कि वी विल नॉट टॉक टू द कंसल्टेंट्स, ऑनर को लेके आओ, क्योंकि भाई ऑनर मर्सिडीज में चलने वाला है, कंसल्टेंट तो गरीब आदमी है बेचारा, कंसल्टेंट झेल लेगा, लेकिन जो मर्सिडीज में चलने वाला है वो पूरा दिन गर्मी में नहीं बैठ सकता, जिसे कहते हैं ना कमजोर नस पे वार करना। सो दे ऑल्सो ट्राई टू फाइंड आउट कि भाई वीक पॉइंट कहाँ पे है। सो crafting, drafting, first of all we need to understand what is the client's stake. Then second thing is accumulate everything whatever they have, read the notice very carefully. हम लोग judgments के पीछे भाग रहे हैं, हम लोग जजमेंट्स के पीछे भाग रहे हैं। लेट मी टेल यू वन थिंग, जो आप चाहे एग्री करो या नहीं करो, 90% केस आपका फैक्ट्स निकाल के लेके जाएंगे, नॉट द जजमेंट्स। आपके फैक्ट्स 90% लेके जाएंगे, स्पेसिफिकली व्हेन देयर इज वेरी लॉन्ग काइंड ऑफ नोटिस। आपका पता चला 80 पेज का नोटिस है, सो वो 80 पेज के नोटिस के फैक्ट्स में डिफेक्ट्स ना हो, ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता। इफ देयर इज अ नोटिस ऑफ 80 पेजेस, उसके फैक्ट्स में डिफेक्ट्स होंगे ही होंगे, बट फाइंडिंग आउट दैट थिंग, एंड मैं अगर एक प्रोफेशनल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से बोलूं, यू विल नीड अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग टीम फॉर दैट, अ टीम विच कैन रीड दोज लॉन्ग नोटिस। 80 पेज के नोटिस को पढ़ना, याद रखना, उसके सारे फैक्ट्स को याद रखना, क्योंकि उसमें कहीं पे किसी का स्टेटमेंट दे रखा है, कहीं पे ये दे रखा है कि भाई अच्छा तुमने ईवे बिल तो बना रखे थे, बट जो तुम्हारे ईवे बिल थे, आजकल ये भी होता है नोटिस में, क्योंकि वो काफी प्रिपरेशन के साथ आते हैं, तो बोलते हैं कि जो तुम्हारे ईवे बिल थे इसमें जो तुमने नाम लिखे हैं, ट्रक के नंबर्स लिखे हुए हैं, वो ट्रक नंबर एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करते। When they come with proper research, and DGGI will mostly come with a complete and proper research. So they said truck drivers are not available. We call the transport company, they are saying we never transported those goods. So what will happen, you will read that notice and you will assume कुछ नहीं हो सकता, ठीक है। So I will again tell you one thing, जो आपको शायद थोड़ा सा लगे controversial है, but in long notices 90% of the case facts will help you, technical issues will help you a lot. So let me start from some basics. First time when you are reading a notice, the first thing we need to do is divide it into two parts. First of all, see all of the technical defects, and second thing is check all of the merits. अभी हम जब रिप्लाई बनाते हैं तो ध्यान देते हैं टेक्निकल क्या है, मेरिट क्या है? No. First of all, divide it into two parts. First of all, check for all of the technical issues, then check for all of the merit based issues. Now, very important thing, if there is a technical defect, we are required to take the acknowledgement of it. We are required to acknowledge it in our reply. Section 160 specifically says question the questionable. If you don't question the questionable, your right to oppose it at a later stage will go. Let me explain what is this. भाई लॉ में लिखा है कि DRC 018 इशू होना है, अब ऑप्शनल हो गया, पहले मैंडेटरी था, अभी भी वी कैन फाइट कि इट्स एक्चुअली मैंडेटरी, ठीक है। उन्होंने मे का मतलब शेल का मे कर दिया, बट स्टिल दे आर जजमेंट विच सेज इट इज स्टिल मैंडेटरी, बिकॉज 74 के अंदर आपको एक ऑप्शन दिया है कि बिफोर द इशुएंस ऑफ नोटिस you have the right to pay the tax with 15% penalty. So if somebody is not issuing DRC 01A, मेरा वो राइट तो सेक्शन के अंदर लिखा हुआ कहाँ चला गया, मैं कैसे करूँ जब मुझे पहले पता ही नहीं चल रहा है? तो 15% पेनल्टी का तो आपने मेरा ऑप्शन ही खत्म कर दिया ना, which was a right given by the section. So many people including me believe that it is still mandatory. So वो लिखा था आपने DRC 01A इशू नहीं किया, and at the level of first reply you never took the cognizance of this particular fact, you never questioned it. So we need to remember one thing, later stage, at the later stage, it will be assumed that technical defects are made good by your reply because you never questioned it. So there is one very important thing, we can note it down. Question the questionable. If there is any technical defect in the notice, it is not issued by the proper authority, any procedure which is laid down in the law is not followed in that particular notice, right? Always mention it. And sometimes your notice can be dropped only on technical basis also. And if it is not time barred, right? If it is time barred, then you can get a relief. If it is not time barred, department can again issue it with the proper procedure. I mean, it may be relieved from that. So apart from this, we will also have some basic understanding about the judgments also. Because what I believe that specifically in CA community, there is a lot of confusion about the covered cases. So what is covered case? When my particular case is already covered in some kind of judgment by some kind of court, but there is very, I will say very general problem that many people comes with a reply, because generally we take care from the appeal. Like we also take care of notice reply, but generally like our work starts from the appeal, because mostly chartered accountants, they answered the notices themselves. And we think it's a covered case. But the problem is we don't understand the basic fundamentals of what judgment will be binding and which judgment will have just a precedential value, and which judgment is just a fact itself and it doesn't have any value in the eye of law. Right. So there's one thing we call judicial discipline. That thing we really, really need to understand. And also we also need to understand the type of judgments. Right. The background of the judgment. So it's not a very easy task while you are reading a judgment, but you don't understand its background. I will give you a very good example to all of you. And for this particular case, I have also written the articles, and one very long article I'm writing for the ICAI journal. So some days back, we had a judgment of Sikkim High Court that was of SICPA, and that was pretty much celebrated by a lot of people. A lot of people have written a lot of LinkedIn posts on it. There were many updated posts on it that now at the time of closure of business, you will be able to get the refund of input tax credit. At first, when I read it, for me, it was a little difficult to digest, because fundamentally, I believe that input tax credits refund should not be given at the time of closure of business, because being a consumption-based tax, you purchased a supply of 1 crore rupees and you sold it for 10,000 rupees, and then you will claim the refund of that whole amount. The thing is, even if you sell it for 10,000, the thing is you have consumed the whole supply. If whole supply is consumed at your end, so there is no stock. I'm assuming there is no closing stock. If closing stock is there, it is being transferred. So at the time of closure, the law itself says if there is any closing stock, it will be assumed that it is transferred. That's a different case. But you consumed a 1 crore rupee supply, you consumed everything, and then you sold it for 10,000 rupees in a loss. So businesses can sell in a loss. That's not a big issue. Then you cannot claim the refund of that input tax credit, because you have consumed the supply, right? But first time when I read the judgment, I really, really wanted to understand the rationale of the court, like why they will give such kind of judgment. And when I read it, then I understood that if a new person is reading that judgment and relying on it, it's totally fair. But if you understand, you know the backgrounds of the judgment. So SICPA in itself is actually a case study to understand what are the binding precedents, right? So doctrine of merger is there. Doctrine of merger says that when Supreme Court decides on something, the decision of High Court merged with it, so it becomes a binding precedent for all of the lower courts, right? But principle of merger doesn't apply where the Supreme Court just rejected the SLP for some other reason, and they rejected the SLP, but they never went into the merits of that particular case, and they never discussed the merit of that particular case. So sometimes the reason for rejecting the SLP can be something different. So that same thing happened in SICPA. So I will just try to tell you what is a defective judgment with this example of SICPA. So in SICPA, there is also a concept, 3 concepts I will try to explain. The first concept is sub silentio, second is per incurium, and third is the doctrine of merger. Doctrine of merger I already explained. Then the next concept is sub silentio. If something was put to the record of a court, but while deciding onto it, they didn't consider it. So sometimes it may happen that I put on record, say 1,000 documents, the court didn't consider some of the documents, and they eventually pronounced a decision. That's a sub silentio decision, and it can be challenged and it can be reversed, right? So it's not a valid judgment. Second thing is per incurium. When something is already decided in some other judgments, which was binding on the court, but none of the advocates, like both of the sides, none of them never put that particular material in front of the court. That's a per incurium. Now, why it was per incurium, specifically SICPA? SICPA was per incurium because Section 54.3 was already discussed at length by Supreme Court in BKC footstep. And they said that 54.3 is a correct section. Right. So they completely ignored what BKC footstep was pronounced and what was said by the Supreme Court at that time. They completely ignored it, first thing. Then they considered the judgment of Slovak India, in that particular case, the SLP was rejected by the Supreme Court. But their reason for rejecting the SLP was not because they accepted the merits of the case, was because that they said the department in some other case which was on the same footing, they never went to the court for that particular case. So court said that you were never came to us for that earlier judgment, so you cannot come for this judgment. So they rejected the SLP, but the reason was different. It was not for adopting the principles of that high court's judgment, but the reason was some technical issue from the side of department. So they considered Slovak India without considering that doctrine of merger will not be applicable in that particular judgment. So in spite of the fact, see, the funny thing is, in spite of the fact that that particular judgment was a Supreme Court judgment, but it's not having a binding value. Right. Now, next thing. Also, there was another judgment of Gori Plasticature, which was pronounced after the Slovak India judgment. And in that particular case also, the court acknowledged this fact that the Supreme Court's SLP rejection will not get it merged, and that's why the refund will not be available. So this is just a case study for you to understand that we cannot blindly rely on each and every kind of judgment. We will have to be very careful, because if we will base, now just understand one thing. Now, if say I am getting 10 cases of ITC refund, right, on the closure of business, or maybe some other cases on the like refund of input tax credit, and I am completely made the base of my representation on the basis of SICPA. Now it's a single judge decision, and when it will travel to a division bench or maybe travel to any upper forum, it may get rejected. Right now, the thing is, the day it will get rejected, my whole submission will fall flat. Whole submission is gone. So it's better to look into the facts of each and every case. So there can still be some genuine cases where the refund can be given to the assessee. So that's why I said that fact is 80% of everything. Then sections and provisions, their interpretation in the law, that's the important part. And after that, the judgments are the important part. We cannot directly jump onto the judgment, and we cannot just start. Like sometimes what happens, we start a drafting only by searching a स्टाफ को विल से कि इस टाइप का कोई देख कोई केस हो इधर उधर किसी कोर्ट का कुछ मिल जाए है ना, तो लेट अस स्टार्ट विद देम, वी स्टार्ट विद दैट. नो, start first from a very deep understanding of facts of your case, and sometimes anything else is not even required. The facts in themselves will be able to serve the purpose, right? So after this background, abhi I will try to define a little about the judgments and how we are supposed to read them, and then I will also give you some 2-3 interesting case studies which will be helpful for you, right? So SICPA was one of them, and again I will say इसको लेके बहुत confusion है. 2 दिन पहले ही I was talking to someone and उन्होंने बोला कि हाँ मेरे पास भी, मैंने कहा तो SICPA में मिल ही जाएगा, and I explained the same thing to him also. I texted him on the WhatsApp कि 3 concepts हैं, take care of them. And again, कोर्ट का, हाई कोर्ट का किसी का भी डिसीजन आता है तो उसके पीछे की बैकग्राउंड, उसके पीछे के जजमेंट्स को भी जाके to deep study them. Sometimes it is also being very required कि हमें थोड़ा सा बैकग्राउंड भी उसका पता रहे. ठीक है, तो अभी मैं I'll be sharing my screen. I hope it's visible. One second. Is it visible? Is it visible?
Yes, Shaifaly.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to like give you a small brief. See, before entering into a litigation field, we need to understand something of law, something of judgments, a little background of it, right? So I'm just trying to give you a little background, so it will be helpful to build your confidence while you're drafting your replies. So first of all, this whole thing that the precedents will be binding on the lower courts for the future decisions, they will be binding, from where this particular concept is coming. So in the law, there is a concept which we call stare decisis, right? So stare decisis means something which is already decided should not be re-decided by each and every person again and again. So जब हम लोगों ने jurisprudence की theories पढ़ते हैं हम लोग law में, jurisprudence evolve कहाँ से हुआ, जैसे एक हमारा हो गया नेचुरल थॉट, हो गया नेचुरल स्कूल जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं, एक हिस्टोरिकल हो गया, एक हमारा होता है जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं डिवाइन स्कूल, तो जो भगवान ने बनाया वही लॉ है, वही बनता चला गया. तो उन्हीं सब कंसेप्ट के साथ में एक इंपॉर्टेंट कंसेप्ट ग्रो हुई जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि यार आप लॉ में कुछ भी लिखे बट एक्चुअली तो होता वो है जो जज करते हैं कोर्ट के अंदर. सो एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम ऑल्सो यू विल सी, अगर आप थोड़ा इंटरेस्ट लेते हैं अलग अलग केस में, एक ही टाइप के केस में, जैसे मान लीजिए पॉक्सो का कोई केस है, तो किसी जज ने कुछ बोल दिया, किसी जज ने कुछ बोल दिया, हम लोग बोलते हैं कि नहीं कोर्ट ऐसे कैसे कह सकती है, लॉ में तो सब क्लियर लिखा है। बट वी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड वन थिंग, लॉ में सब कुछ क्लियर नहीं लिखा होता। लॉ में क्लियर कभी कुछ लिखा ही नहीं जा सकता, मल्टीपल इंटरप्रिटेशंस निकलती हैं, मल्टीपल सिचुएशन में आके जो नॉर्मल इंटरप्रिटेशन है वो कई बार फेल हो जाती है, राइट। एंड विद द डेवलपमेंट इन सोसाइटी एंड टाइम एंड थॉट प्रोसेस ऑफ द पीपल, लॉ चेंज भी होता है, उसका इम्प्लीकेशन भी चेंज होता है। जैसे कुछ टाइम पहले तक जब डॉबरी बहुत ज्यादा था, तो लॉ में ये था कि नहीं, डॉबरी के लिए मैंने कह दिया कि भाई आपको तो कुछ साबित भी करने की जरूरत नहीं है, एज्यूम, पहले से मैजिस्ट्रेट एज्यूम किया जाएगा, द अदर पार्टी विल हैव टू डू इट। ना बहुत सारे अगर फेक केसेस बढ़ते रहेंगे तो लॉ का इंटरप्रिटेशन हमें चेंज करना पड़ेगा, लेकिन सोसाइटी उस हिसाब से एक दूसरे लेवल पे पहुंच गई। सो द ओल्ड प्रोविजन एंड देयर ओल्ड इंटरप्रिटेशन विल नॉट बी वर्केबल इन दैट सोसाइटी एनी मोर, तो आपको उसके हिसाब से चेंज करना पड़ेगा। सो इसके लिए एक कंसेप्ट होता है विच वी कॉल स्टेयर डेसिसिस। इसका मतलब है कि हर चीज जो एक बार डिसाइड हो चुकी है उसको बार बार डिसाइड नहीं किया जाए, टू प्रिवेंट द आर्बिट्रेरीनेस, राइट। नाउ लेट अस से कि भाई मैं एक जज हूँ, मैं फीमेल हूँ, लेट से आई एम बायस टुवर्ड्स फीमेल, तो कुछ भी डिसीजन होगा मैं उनके हिसाब से डिसाइड करूंगी। कोई मेल जज है, कोई पता चले दिल जला हुआ है किसी का, किसी भी एज में दिल जलता है, वैसे जनरली जज बनने तक की एज में बहुत ज्यादा एज हो चुकी होती है लोगों की, लेकिन आजकल बच्चों के दिल कम जल रहे हैं, आजकल बड़े लोगों के दिल ज्यादा जल रहे हैं। सो मान लीजिए उनको है कि नहीं मुझे तो नफरत ही है, मतलब वो ठुकरा के मेरा प्यार वाला सिचुएशन है, तो उन्होंने कहा आ जाए मेरे पास, कोई तो केस है मैं बताऊंगा, उन्होंने उनके अगेंस्ट डिसीजन दे दिया। तो आर्बिट्रेरीनेस को रोकने के लिए देयर इज द कंसेप्ट ऑफ स्टेयर डेसिसिस, और यहीं से हमारा जो जुडिशियल डिसिप्लिन है वो जन्म लेता है कि भाई जो एक बार कोर्ट ने कह दिया वो आपका फाइनल माना जाएगा। तो थोड़ा सा थ्योरी में वो आपको बहुत ज्यादा पढ़ाऊंगी नहीं इसको, ठीक है, सिर्फ जो बोल्ड पार्ट है ओनली दैट आई विल बी शोइंग यू। The judgments are not to be altered or changed in accordance with the individual opinion. So this is very important thing. if मेरा इंडिविजुअल ओपिनियन के हिसाब से आप चेंज नहीं करोगे ना, और द प्राइवेट सेंटिमेंट्स ऑफ द जजेस, सो दैट इज द बेस जहां से जन्म लेती है कंसेप्ट किस चीज की, स्टेयर डेसिसिस की। Then, in every judgment, there are two parts of the judgment. The one is ratio decidendi, and other is the obiter dicta. So, ratio is the ratio which is being laid down by the court. जिस रेशो के बेसिस पे उन्होंने कोई चीज डिसाइड की। ऑन दी अदर हैंड ऑबिटर डिक्टा इज द फैक्चुअल पोजिशन ऑफ अ पर्टिकुलर केस, राइट। तो रेशो इज द बाइंडिंग पार्ट ऑफ अ जजमेंट, बट ऑबिटर डिक्टा इज नॉट बाइंडिंग। इन सम unique cases orbital dicta can also be binding अगर factual उसमें ज्यादा है, but in most of the cases the ratio is the binding part and orbital dicta is not the binding part, because what will happen if we will make the facts binding, what will happen, people will try to create the same kind of facts, they will start faking the facts। तो facts नहीं, facts के पीछे का जो concept था, right। So for an example, एक छोटा बच्चा है चिंटू, वो अपनी मैम के पास जाके बोला मैडम पेट में बहुत तेज दर्द हो रहा है, मैम ने उसको एक टैबलेट दी निकाल के कि बेटा घर जा, कोई बात नहीं, बैग लेके घर जा। अब जैसे मैम ने ये किया होगा तो क्लास के बाकी बच्चों के दिल में क्या आया होगा, अपने भी पेट में दर्द होना चाहिए कभी, नहीं। तो अगले दिन एक और बच्चा था, उसने मैडम को बोला मैडम पेट में दर्द है बहुत ज्यादा, मैम ने कहा तो चमाट एक लगाऊंगा ना तो सीट पे जाके बैठ अपनी। तो बच्चे क्या बोलेगा, सेम सिचुएशन थी, दोनों के पेट में दर्द था, तो आपने मुझे रिलीफ नहीं दिया, मुझे तो चमाट लगा, उसको क्यों घर भेज दिया, बिकॉज व्हाट इज एप्लीकेबल नॉट दी ऑबिटर डिक्टा, फैक्ट्स एप्लीकेबल नहीं है, क्या एप्लीकेबल है, रेशो डिसाइडेंडी। मतलब जब किसी बच्चों को ऐसी प्रॉब्लम है कि उसको वहां पे बैठने में इश्यू है स्कूल में, वी विल सेंड देम बैक टू द होम। लेकिन कोई जानबूझ के वैसे फैक्ट्स नकली क्रिएट करके आ जाए कि भाई मेरे को भी बेनिफिट दो, आपने उसको भी तो बेनिफिट दिया, तो रिलीफ आपको नहीं मिलेगा। सो वाइल रीडिंग द जजमेंट्स, एंड वी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड द जजमेंट्स जो अच्छे होते हैं इलैबोरेटिव, समटाइम्स दे मे बी रनिंग इनटू लाइक 100 पेजेस और 150 पेजेस। सो वहां पे इट बिकम्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू फाइंड आउट व्हाट इज द रेशो डिसाइडेड, किस बेसिस पे कोर्ट ने डिसाइड किया, ठीक है। और अभी जितने हमारे जीएसटी के केसेस है ना, आई एम गोइंग टू डिस्कस अ वेरी आई विल से वेरी फनी फैक्ट अबाउट ऑल ऑफ दोस जजमेंट, जितने भी हैं जीएसटी के सारे, ठीक है। सो एक बार देख लेते हैं व्हाट इज रेशो डिसाइडेंडी। सो ओनली द बोल्ड पार्ट आई विल बी ट्राइंग टू रीड फॉर यू। Only that much which has been decided and is the ratio decided is binding. The judgments are not to be read like statutes. I will believe it's a very powerful line. बिकॉज जब हम एनालिसिस करते हैं ना जजमेंट्स का, मैं देखती हूँ या कभी मैं सुनती भी हूँ कि somebody is discussing a judgment, हम उसकी एक एक लाइन को ऐसे एक्सेप्ट करके चलते हैं जैसे वो स्टेट्यूट में लिखा हो. नो, यू कैन नॉट रीड ए जजमेंट लाइक अ स्टेट्यूट. उसकी एक एक लाइन की कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. आपको उसके पीछे की आत्मा समझनी पड़ेगी, कोर्ट ने क्या सोच के. दैट्स व्हाई यू विल सी अ लॉट ऑफ कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन इन जजमेंट्स. अनलाइक द स्टेट्यूट यू विल सी अ लॉट ऑफ कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन. कॉन्डोनेशन ऑफ डिले है, एक कोर्ट देता है दूसरा नहीं देता. दिल्ली वाले तो देखते ही नहीं है. दिल्ली वाले बोलते हैं कि भैया नो, कॉन्डोनेशन ऑफ डिले हम दे ही नहीं सकते, पॉसिबल ही नहीं है हमारे लिए. उधर मद्रास वाले कॉन्डोनेशन पे कॉन्डोनेशन दिए जा रहे हैं. एवरी कोर्ट इज ट्रीटिंग एज पर देयर कन्वीनियंस, राइट. क्योंकि कोई रेशो लेट डाउन हो ही नहीं रहा है. रेशो कोई लेट डाउन हो ही नहीं रहा है उसके अंदर. ठीक है जी. सो द कोर्ट रिलाइंग अपॉन ए बाइंडिंग प्रेसिडेंट शैल बी केयरफुल. So while even a court is relying upon a binding precedent, should be careful to find out the ratio of the decision. Such ratio must be on the matter in law and not the decision on facts. Law पे चलना है, facts पे नहीं चलना है. Now what is obiter dicta? The obiter dicta is the incidental question which may arise indirectly connected with the main question for the consideration. The observations on such questions are not binding as a precedent. So obiter dicta part of every judgment is not binding, even if the judgment itself is a binding precedent. Obiter dicta will not be binding. So that's why I say कि इतना आसान नहीं है. I say ना, being a CA, we are never, I will say, taught to look at the judgments from this point of view. And इसीलिए होता है, sometimes some people will be calling, मैडम मैंने 4 जजमेंट दिए थे अपनी सबमिशन में, उसने चारों के चारों ही नहीं माने. उसने कहते मैं नहीं मानता इसको. ठीक है. Then sometimes I say कि if it is a judicial discipline and they are binding with that particular judgment, आप उनके खिलाफ contempt of court डालो ना. बाइंडिंग जजमेंट है तो आप कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ कोर्ट डाल सकते हो ना, बट आप नहीं डाल सकते. व्हाई? बिकॉज हमें खुद नहीं पता कि वो एक्चुअली बाइंडिंग प्रेसिडेंट है कि नहीं है. वी डोंट हैव दैट मच ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस. इफ वी विल बी हैविंग दैट लेवल ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस, तो ऐसा हुआ है इनकम टैक्स में, देयर आर द केसेस जहां पे बाइंडिंग जजमेंट्स थे, ऑफिसर ने नहीं माना तो 1 करोड़ की भी पेनल्टी लगी ऑफिसर पे फ्रॉम देयर पर्सनल सैलरी, राइट. बट अगेन वी विल हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड इट. चलिए, when does an order become a binding precedent? कब बनेगा? सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने एक्सप्लेन किया किसी जजमेंट के अंदर ही. मैंने उसका कुछ छोटा सा एक्सर्ट्स आप लोगों के लिए दिया है. The court made the following observation regarding the concept of ratio decidendum and binding precedent. What is binding in terms of Article 141 of the Constitution? Merger की जो बात करता है सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट्स के, is the ratio of the judgment, and as already noted, the ratio decidendum of the judgment is a reason assigned in support of the conclusion. Next, the reason of a judgment can be discerned only upon reading of a judgment in its entirety, and same has to be culled out thereafter. The ratio of the case has to be deducted from the facts involved in the case and the particular provisions of the law which the court has applied or interpreted, and the decision has to be read to the context of the particular statutory provision. चलिए, मैं इसको बहुत ज्यादा भी रीड आउट नहीं कर रही हूँ. द पीपीटी विल बी यू. आपका मन करेगा कभी तो पढ़ लेना आप लोग. ठीक है. नाउ कैन द बाइट अप, ये भी बड़ा अच्छा सवाल है. वी आर लकी टू सी द हिस्ट्री, क्योंकि पिछले 1.5-2 साल में सुप्रीम कोर्ट के ऐसे 2-3 जजमेंट्स हैं जिनको उन्होंने खुद ही चेंज कर दिया. एंड आफ्टर सो मेनी इयर्स, राइट. अभी कैन बाइंडिंग प्रेसिडेंट, जो बाइंडिंग प्रेसिडेंट था किसका? सुप्रीम कोर्ट का भी था. क्या वो अनटचेबल है? क्या वो कभी चेंज नहीं हो सकता रॉयल्टी के केस में? देन कैन इन इंडिया लास्ट टू द लास्ट ईयर हुआ है ना चेंज, तो अब वो वही बता रहे हैं कब चेंज हो सकता है. The doctrines of per incuriam and sub silentio are the exception to the rule of stare decisis. तो मैं आपको बैकग्राउंड से क्यों बता रही हूँ? The basic concept was of stare decisis, something which is already decided will not be redecided. अब उसके 2 exceptions क्या है? The per incuriam and the sub silentio, right? Per incuriam है अगर judgment या sub silentio है तो वो stare decisis पे apply नहीं होगा. If a decision has been given in the ignorance of law or any institute or any binding authority, the doctrine of per incuriam is attracted. Rule of sub silentio is applicable where a particular point of law is not pursued by the court or was not present to its mind or is not consciously determined by the court. So these are the instances जब आपका हो सकता है. We are not going to discuss about the date, उसके बारे में कुछ नहीं डिस्कस करेंगे हम लोग. ठीक है. Now let us try to understand कि भाई हमारा अब जो हम नोटिस के रिप्लाई की बात कर रहे हैं, तो देखो मैं आपको अगर ड्राफ्टिंग की बात करूं, so one second, we don't need to share it anymore. Let me remove the PPT from the screen. Stop sharing. So now let us come back to the our litigation part. So while we are replying to the notices, the first and foremost thing is
एक सेकंड
I think someone's mic is not on mute. Please put it on mute. All of you are requested. So first and foremost thing is we are required to understand is to know the facts properly. And while you will be knowing the facts, from the facts you will be able to trace out the defect from the side of department. I will again be saying this thing. I know generally like people in the seminars or webinars don't say it. While you are drafting your reply, our duty is not to investigate and not to put out the true picture of something. Our duty is to strengthen our case because our loyalty is to the client. This is the difference between audit and litigation. This is the difference between the audit and the litigation. In the audit, because the right of certification is given by the government, our loyalty should be with the government, but we all understand practically it's not possible. But actually, it should be to the government because the right to signature is given by the government itself. But in case of litigation, what our duty is to strengthen the case, right? And most of the time, you will find the cases which at the first instance will not look that strong. So now this is our art to read into the provisions of it, read into the facts of it, and try to carve out the issues from the facts. So, for example, in a case, let us say statement is there, statement is already recorded. Then there are the WhatsApp chats which are being attached, right? Then there are some other proof which are being given by the department. Now, first of all, we need to understand that in the Evidence Act, lot of provisions are there to understand the genuinity of the evidence. See, while we are replying to a notice, we are also required to check the genuinity of the evidence. So in many cases, I mean, don't think that department will do everything correctly. So while they will be saying that, okay, there's a WhatsApp chat recording, there's a WhatsApp chat screenshot, but that may be framed. So there is a specific mechanism under the Evidence Act also, which says that if you are attaching any digital document, it should be properly certified. And what I have seen in most of the notices, they don't verify it digitally. Because in customs, they always do it. Because the custom people, वो पहले से उनको पता है कि evidence कोई है तो electronic उसको certify करके देना है. Customs we will always find certified evidence, but still you will find that. So carried away. अरे इसने तो statement में लिखा है मैंने तो ये किया है. Don't carried away with that. There is possibility, and in most of the cases आप यहाँ बैठे हो, लिखी गई है, टाइप हुई है स्टेटमेंट, आप सिर्फ साइन ही करता है आपको ऐसे कोई अपने दिमाग से सोच के कहानी बना के नहीं लिख पाता, जो सामने वाला बोलता है वही साइन करके दी होती है. सो अच्छा, नाउ देयर इज वन मोर इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन. हम सब लोगों ने इधर उधर सुना होगा कि पुलिस के सामने जो स्टेटमेंट दैट इज नॉट अ वैलिड स्टेटमेंट. सो आर्टिकल 21, आर्टिकल 22 टॉक्स अबाउट सम ऑफ दीज थिंग्स. सो आर्टिकल 21 सेज कि किसी को भी अपने अगेंस्ट विटनेस करने के लिए फोर्स नहीं किया जा सकता. ये नहीं पढ़ा होगा, लेकिन कभी इधर थोड़ा बहुत कुछ क्रिमिनल मूवी देखी होगी तो ये तो सुना ही होगा कि आपने जो पुलिस के सामने स्टेटमेंट दिया उसका कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. तो यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन अराइज होता है कि जो किसी ने स्टेटमेंट दिया है इन फ्रंट ऑफ अथॉरिटीज, टैक्सेशन अथॉरिटीज, इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग अथॉरिटीज, क्या उसका वैल्यू है? तो दोनों का ही आंसर क्या है? कोलैबोरेटिव एविडेंस होना इज इंपॉर्टेंट. सो देयर इज अ जजमेंट ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट आल्सो व्हिच हैज सेड कि स्टेटमेंट को आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि नहीं ये वैलिड नहीं है, क्योंकि टैक्सेशन लॉ में द फुटिंग इज डिफरेंट. सो आर्टिकल प्रोवाइड फॉर द क्रिमिनल केसेस, वहां पे तो आपको मजिस्ट्रेट के सामने दोबारा ही देनी होती है स्टेटमेंट. But for the taxation laws, they said कि नहीं, statement can be valid, but collaborative evidences should be there. And in each and every case, collaborative evidences should always be there. So as you must have seen कि कभी आप कुछ क्रिमिनल मूवी देखते होंगे, so sometimes you must have seen कि पुलिस विल से कि यार अच्छा तुमने मर्डर किया है, किस हथियार से किया, इससे किया, कहाँ पे रखा है, वहां पे रखा है. तो अभी लगता है कि वो बंदा सामने से बोल रहा है कि हाँ मैंने किया है, तो तुम्हें क्या करना है वेपन का, तुम्हें क्या करना है डेड बॉडी का? दीज आर दी कोलैबोरेटिव एविडेंस. बिकॉज व्हेन आई विल गो टू द कोर्ट, आई विल से कि इसने बताया कि वहां पे रखा और वहां से निकला. सो एट द फ्रंट ऑफ मजिस्ट्रेट इफ द सम पर्सन सेइंग नहीं मैंने तो, मुझे तो थप्पड़ मार के स्टेटमेंट लिवाया था, तो कोर्ट कहेगा ठीक है थप्पड़ मार के स्टेटमेंट तो ले सकते हैं, लेकिन आपकी स्टेटमेंट में आपने बोला कि वहां पे मिला और वहां पे मिला, तो दैट इज अ कोलैबोरेटिव एविडेंस. सो सेम थिंग इज रिक्वायर्ड टू बी हैपन इन the GST, in the taxation laws also, any taxation laws also, if investigation is there and there is a statement from the assessee, there should be some collaborative evidence. If there is a collaborative evidence, the statement is valid. If there is no collaborative evidence and like the facts are not even matching with the statement, in that case, you can always say that a statement was under pressure and like we were forced to give it. Now, the next thing, whenever you're reading a notice, there are two very important parts which you're required to understand, apart from all of the facts of the particular notice, which may run into like many pages. The fact is RUDs, that is the relied upon documents which are given with the notice. So in most of the cases, again, I will say if it is a DGGI, DRI case, the RUDs, a long list of RUDs will be there. In case of departmental case, they try to make the RUDs available, but at the name of RUDs, they will have nothing. I mean, they will just say RUD is there, तो RUD में क्या है, statement लगा दिया, RUD के अंदर मान लो कुछ बैंक का data लगा दिया, 2A3 भी लगा देते हैं कई बार RUD में, they are not RUDs. So RUD means relied upon document. So second thing we are required to check is the all relied upon document, all of the documents and the proof, the evidences which department is relied, specifically in the case of 74. आपके पास कोई एविडेंस ही नहीं है, then how you can allege that I have done a fraud, right? Then another important thing, RUDs तो डिपार्टमेंट देता ही है. I will again say कि अगर आपका केस DGGI से आया है, 74 का केस है, most of the cases में relied upon document they will be providing. Then you should also ask the NRUDs, that is non relied upon document. Now the question, दो क्वेश्चन आते हैं इसमें. पहली बात तो ये कि मुझे नॉन रिलाइड अपॉन डॉक्यूमेंट का करना क्या है. डिपार्टमेंट ने उन पर रिलाई ही नहीं किया मेरे अगेंस्ट चार्जेस फ्रेम करने में, देन व्हाई डू आई नीड टू सी द नॉन रिलाइड अपॉन डॉक्यूमेंट. एंड ये भी अभी एक रीसेंट जजमेंट में कोर्ट ने फिक्स किया है. मतलब दैट वाज आल्सो अ क्वेश्चन बिकॉज़ सम डेज बैक, around 4-5 months back, I made a post on this particular issue that the non relied upon document should also be provided to the assessee. And there was some officer from the department on it, and he said where it is written in law that department is bound to give you the non relied upon documents. So luckily uske kuch din baad hi there was the judgment. In that particular judgment, the court said the department is bound to provide the non relied upon documents also. And what we will do with the non relied upon document, मुझे करना क्या है उसका, मुझे उसका ये करना है कि department came to your place, they asked, let us say you were having 200 employees, so they took the statement of 100 employees, say 30 employees, 10 employees, right? So out of 10 employees, 9 said that everything is genuine. 10 एम्प्लॉई में से 9 के 9 ने कहा सब कुछ जेन्युइन है, सर बिल्कुल ठीक काम करते हैं, हमारे यहाँ से प्रॉपर गुड्स जाती हैं, प्रॉपरली हम ई-मेल बनाते हैं, सब कुछ बिल्कुल कंप्लायंट है. नाउ देयर वाज वन एम्प्लॉई इन योर ऑफिस जिसकी आपने सैलरी नहीं बढ़ाई थी, और देयर वाज वन एम्प्लॉई की जिससे 2 दिन पहले ही गाली गलौच हुई थी कि भाई तू ठीक से काम क्यों नहीं करता, तू पूरा दिन ऑफिस में व्हाट्सएप और फेसबुक पे कैसे लगा, तो इंस्टाग्राम कैसे देख रहा है ऑफिस में. सो दैट डिस्ग्रंटल्ड एम्प्लॉई से नो सर, they were doing everything in genuine, there was no supply of goods, there were only fake invoices. And there was one DGGI case that actually happened only and only because of employee. That's a real case scenario, so it's not theoretical, this is actually real. कि 2-3 महीने पहले एम्प्लॉय से किसी बात पे झगड़ा हुआ, एंड होता है, वी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड कि हमारी मातृभाषा के कुछ बड़े सुंदर सुंदर शब्द हैं जो अक्सर हम लोग गुस्से में यूज कर लेते हैं एक दूसरे के लिए, तो वो ऐसा थोड़ा गहमा गहमी में यूज हो गया. एम्प्लॉय वाज डिसग्रंटल्ड by this particular fact. So what he did for the 2 months, he was collecting all of the evidence against his own owners. And just then DGI का raid हुआ, the owner was shocked, like how they know everything, how they have everything. And later on they came to know that that employees had made a complete set of documents and submitted it to the DGI. Sometimes that is also possible. So not just the relied upon, but the non-relied upon documents also we should try to ask from the department. But वो सब लेके करना क्या है? After collecting all of those things, you are required to make very intense study of each and every small aspect. And again, I will say at the cost of repetition, I am saying in many cases your case will get solved. It will get its strength. तो मैंने आपको बोला है कि आपका फर्स्ट रिप्लाई का जो पर्पज है, आपका रिप्रेजेंट करने का जो पर्पज है, नॉट टू इन्वेस्टिगेट, कोई हमें अदालत में खड़े होकर वो पानी का पानी दूध का दूध करने वाली नहीं है. हमारा केस है कि हमें स्ट्रॉन्ग करना है. Out of those so many pages running into like hundreds of pages to find out what is in support of our clients, find out all of those things, right? So उसमें से जो हमारे केस स्ट्रेंथन करेंगे वो सारे फैक्ट्स निकाल के मेरे को उसको देने हैं, तो वो all of the documents, evidences, all of those will help with the help of provisions. जैसे books of account. Now what practically happens, लेट अस से नोटिस आया, आप गए डिपार्टमेंट में, उन्होंने कहा बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स ले आओ, आपने क्लाइंट से पूछा, उसने कहा मैंने तो प्रॉपर्ली बनाने रखी, पहले एक अकाउंटेंट था, उसकी सैलरी मेरे को ज्यादा लगती थी तो मैंने हटा दिया, फिर रिप्लेसमेंट आया नहीं। दैट्स अ वेरी जनरल सिनेरियो। अभी वैसे भी जो अकाउंटेंट वाली जो एक जाती है वो धीरे धीरे खत्म होती जा रही है, वेरी फ्यू पीपल आर देयर इनटू दिस पर्टिकुलर फील्ड, राइट। अब आपसे कहा बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स, यू वेंट टू द डिपार्टमेंट से, सर बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स है नहीं प्रॉपर्ली बने हुए, तो दे विल से कि एक काम करो तुम बना दो, 1-2 महीने में दे दो। से नो, it's not my duty to prepare their books of accounts. Books of accounts properly are not maintained. There is a specific penalty for it. Levy a penalty. That's it. I cannot make the whole set of books of accounts for them. Now, इसमें पता है इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट क्या है? काफी सदियों से हम लोग लिटिगेशन में बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स को यूज करते आए हैं, बट इफ यू विल रीड दी एविडेंस एक्ट जो भी भारतीय साक्ष्य अधिनियम हो गया, तो एविडेंस एक्ट तो बड़ा हमारा पुराने वाला एक्ट था, उसके बाद जो है चेंज करके हमारा आ गया भारतीय साक्ष्य अधिनियम। तो भारतीय साक्ष्य अधिनियम का सेक्शन 28 एंड आई थिंक एविडेंस एक्ट का सेक्शन 34 था, विच इज रिप्लेस्ड बाय सेक्शन 28 इन दी भारतीय साक्ष्य अधिनियम। वहां पे ये कहा है कि बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स आर एक्चुअली नॉट एविडेंस, तो दे आर नॉट इवन एन एविडेंस। वही बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स जिनको हम लोग देते रहते हैं बना बना के पूरे के पूरे, कि सब ले जाओ जो चाहिए ले जाओ, कोई बात नहीं, कुछ करके कर लो। So again, unless and until we understand what is our rights, what are the facts, what are the provisions of law which are in our favor, it will be very difficult for us to, like fight any case, consider any case. And let me tell you one fact. Again, I will say that then publicly कोई बोले या नहीं बोले, मैं आपको बहुत openly बोल रही हूँ कि at the level of adjudication it's very difficult to get a favorable order, and generally you make it clear to the client कि at the level of adjudication अगर थोड़ा सा भी कॉम्प्लेक्स केस है इट विल बी डिफिकल्ट। सो हो ये कि आप उसको पूरा स्ट्रेटजी बताओ कि भैया इस लेवल पे ये होगा, इस लेवल पे ये होगा, सो दैट दे डोंट गेट पैनिक कि एक दिन अचानक से ऑर्डर आया एंड दे अंडरस्टूड एंड दे दे पोज इट लाइक इट्स योर फेलियर। सो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू उनको डे वन से यू शुड मेक इट क्लियर कि भैया एडजुडिकेशन पे आपका ये पॉसिबिलिटी हो सकती है, एट द अपील लेवल पॉसिबिलिटीज आर हायर, बट बाकी हम सब लोग जितने भी बड़े और कॉम्प्लेक्स केस वाले हैं हम सब कहाँ मिलने वाले हैं? ट्रिब्यूनल में। चाहे आपका केस हो चाहे मेरा केस हो, फाइनली तो हम सब लोग ट्रिब्यूनल में मिलने ही वाले हैं, राइट। सो वहां पे जहाँ पे हम एक बहुत अच्छी फेयर डिसीजन की एक्सपेक्टेशन कर सकते हैं। मैम, हाउ मच टाइम इज लेफ्ट फॉर मी?
Ma'am, yeah, I think it's
Ma'am, take 5-10 minutes more.
yeah,
5
5
minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. So we understood about the notices, 73 notices, 74 notices. Now there is one more case. Sometimes what happens, department, they mix it up. They mix the audit, they mix the scrutiny, they mix the 73, they mix the 74. So what we need to understand is that every particular section, whether it's audit, whether it's 73, 74, or whether it's scrutiny, all of those stands for some specific different purposes. So you cannot do a scrutiny while you are doing the adjudication. You cannot do the adjudication while doing the scrutiny. You cannot do the investigation while doing the audit. So in one of the case in Gujarat, so our head office is in Gujarat actually. So one of the cases, if the client dare, क्योंकि यहाँ पे अपनी सिचुएशन तो कृष्ण जी वाली है, लड़ाई उसकी है, युद्ध उसको लड़ना है, आप सिर्फ समझा सकते हो कोर्स ऑफ एक्शन कि भाई ऐसे कर लो, ऐसे कर लो। अल्टीमेटली व्हाट दे वांट टू डू, वो एडजस्टमेंट करना चाहते हैं तो आप उसमें कुछ नहीं कर सकते, बिकॉज से महाभारत ऑल्सो तो प्रपोजल भेजा था ना कि 5 गांव पे भी हम लोग एडजस्ट कर लेंगे, इन स्पाइट ऑफ एवरीथिंग। इतना सब कुछ होने के बाद भी समवन वाज रेडी टू एडजस्ट फॉर 5 गांव, चलो एडजस्ट कर लेंगे, तो सामने वाले ने मना कर दिया, सुई के नोक के बराबर भी नहीं देने वाला, तो हो गया युद्ध, अदरवाइज तो युद्ध नहीं होता है ना। तो एसएससी भी यही होता है, बिल्कुल एसएससी भी चाहता है कि युद्ध ना करना पड़े, तो मेरे लिए ज्यादा अच्छा है कि जितना आराम से 5 गांव दे के सेटलमेंट हो जाए तो उतना सही है मेरे लिए। बट वी कैन ओनली गाइड देम कि भाई लड़ो, लड़ाई बनती है करना तो लड़ो, बट अल्टीमेटली फाइट उसके, तो टेकअप उसी को करना है। सो in terms of audit, they cannot investigate. So when they come for audit, they will ask X number of information, ये information, वो information, वो information. The problem is they don't know, उनको खुद नहीं पता है कि वो क्या audit कर रहे हैं। उनका ये कि they will keep asking the information, तो कुछ तो मिल ही जाएगा। अभी आपने ये information दे दी, ये information दे दी, इसमें से कुछ नहीं मिला, एक और कोई चीज लिया उसमें से कुछ नहीं मिला, इसकी explanation दे दो उसमें से कुछ नहीं मिला, तो आप उनको जवाब देते जाओगे, वो उस point को drop करके they will start picking some other points. So what we need to understand, or what department is actually required to understand, that audit is not investigation. Audit is not a forensic. Audit is definitely not adjudication. So there is very limited purpose of audit for the purpose of GST, that they should be stick to that. So sometimes we can also deny to give a particular set of information if we have to do a lot of work in that. तो ऐसा नहीं कि उन्होंने बोला कि ये डिफरेंस कैसे आ गया. सर रुको, मैं रिकंसिलेशन एक्सपर्ट्स, वी आर रिकंसिलेशन एक्सपर्ट्स, हर तरीके का रिकंसिलेशन करके देंगे. तो अगर कॉलम्स में नहीं आ रहा होगा, अगर मतलब 10 कॉलम हो गए तो उसको वैसे वर्टिकल बना के देंगे, 50 कॉलम ऐड करके हम उसको शीट्स में, एक्सेल की शीट्स पे शीट्स भर देंगे. लेकिन रिकंसिलेशन तो हम लोगों ने बचपन में सीख लिया था, बैंक रिकंसिलेशन से स्टार्ट किया था 12वीं क्लास में. उसके बाद से तो हम लोग रिकंसिलेशन के एक्सपर्ट है, वो तो हम आपको करके देंगे. नो, just always try to take a stand that we are not going to give each and every piece of information you are asking. If something is already available in the portal, please refer to the portal. If something is not specifically required to be mentioned in the law, तो law में section 35 ने बोला ये करना है तो वो हम कर रहे हैं. So it doesn't mean कि आपके 10 तरीके के अलग अलग एनालिसिस, आपको इसका कंपेरिजन इसके साथ चाहिए, उसकी रिकंसिलेशन उसके साथ चाहिए. It's not a responsibility to provide you each and everything. आपको भी एक्सेल आता है, और आजकल तो समटाइम्स दे विल आस्क दे बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स दे दो, सारे सब दे दो उनको, देखना कुछ नहीं होता है, बट बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स उनको पूरा चाहिए. राइट, देन if some piece of information is not available to us, notice में ऐसा आया है but आपके पास नहीं है, always try to seek the information from the department also, because there are a lot of notices which are being issued on the basis of their intelligence. अभी intelligence का मतलब क्या है? Information जो उनके पास आ रही है पीछे से, there is no, it's not defined. उस इंटेलिजेंस का बेसिस क्या है वो भी नहीं डिफाइन. समटाइम्स इंटेलिजेंस इज नॉट इंटेलिजेंट इनफ इटसेल्फ टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज टैक्सेबल एंड व्हाट इज नॉट टैक्सेबल. तो इंटेलिजेंस से तो आ रहा है, बट इंटेलिजेंस खुद ही इंटेलिजेंट नहीं है ये समझने के लिए कि उसमें टैक्सेबिलिटी बनेगी कि भी नहीं बनेगी. राइट, सो इन वन ऑफ द केस व्हाट दे डिड, उनको अगेन बोला ना डिफरेंसेस के लिए जो उनका पागलपन है कि डिफरेंस नहीं रहा, एक एक पैसा मिला के छोड़ेंगे. भी हम लोग सब लोगों ने वो एक्सेल पे पहले बैलेंस शीट बनाई, तो बच्चे सॉफ्टवेयर बनाते हैं, हमारे टाइम पे वो लंबी लंबी एक्सेल की शीट्स में बैलेंस शीट बनाते थे. तो वहां पे जो हमारे बॉस होते थे ना, वो पैसों से बैलेंस शीट मिलवाते थे, क्योंकि उनको लगता था कि पैसों से भी नहीं मिली तो तुमने हो सकता है कि कहीं 500 रुपए जोड़ के कहीं 500 रुपए घटा रखे हो, तो बिल्कुल पैसे से पैसा मिलेगा इसका मतलब तभी परफेक्ट मिली है वो. तो अभी वही ऑब्सेशन इन लोगों है कि एक एक चीज मिला के रहेंगे. जीएसटी 9C 3B 2B 2A, जितनी चीजें एक एक चीज मिला के रहेंगे आपकी. सो व्हाट दे डिड, उनको भी पीछे से इन्फॉर्मेशन, वही इंटेलिजेंस आया उनको, दे सेड कि आपके ईवे बिल में एंड जीएसटी 1 में द सेल्स यू रिपोर्टेड देयर इज अ डिफरेंस ऑफ 2 करोड़ रुपीस. ठीक है, 2 करोड़ रुपए बहुत अच्छी बात है. देन क्या होता है, पैनिक होकर टीम को लगा था देखो डिफरेंस कहाँ से आ रहा है. सर कि भैया मेरे पास तो ऐसी कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं ना, हमने ऐसे कोई रिकंसिलेशन बना रखा है. यू कैन डू वन थिंग, if you have the information that there is a difference of 2 crore rupees, what you can do, give me the invoice wise e-way bill, list of all e-way bills you have with the amount, and also give me the details of all like GSTR1 totals. Then we will be able to reconcile each and every e-way bill with our data, and then only then we will be able to tell you like why there is a difference. So एक दिन कोई जवाब नहीं है, 2 दिन कोई जवाब नहीं है, 3 दिन भी कोई जवाब नहीं है, बिकॉज उनको भी पीछे से सिर्फ अमाउंट ही मिली थी कि इसमें इतना डिफरेंस है. इवन दे वर नॉट हैविंग द डिटेल्स. भाई आप क्लेम कर रहे हो इतना डिफरेंस है तो आपके पास तो इन्फॉर्मेशन है, यू गिव मी द इन्फॉर्मेशन. आई डोंट हैव एनी मेजर्स, एनी आई डोंट हैव एनी फैसिलिटी टू एक्सेस दैट काइंड ऑफ इन्फॉर्मेशन कि मुझे एक एक ईमेल पोर्टल से सारे डाउनलोड होते नहीं है लाइन वाइज आइटम. सो ओके ठीक है. So 3 दिन 4 दिन 5 दिन कोई जवाब नहीं आया. Then one day I went to the department. I said that okay, I can help you if you want. Then I looked into their portal. तो 30-32 जितने भी राज्य हैं, for every state, for every month, they will have to generate a separate report. So अब आपको 12 महीने का निकालना है और 30 के 30 स्टेट में 360 times you will have to run that report, and then it will create one Excel. राइट, और उस वन एक्सेल को बार बार आप एक्सपोर्ट करोगे, फिर एक्सपोर्ट करके सारे एक्सेल्स को एक बार कॉपी पेस्ट करोगे, ओनली देन यू विल बी एबल टू फाइंड आउट दैट इन्फॉर्मेशन. सो दैट गाय जेन्युइनली ट्राइड फॉर लाइक 1-2 hours, लेकिन उसके बाद वो इतना पक गया. मैंने कहा ये सीए ही कर सकते हैं इतनी मेहनत वाली न्यूमेरिकल काम, आप नहीं कर सकते. ही वाज सो मच टायर्ड, मैंने कहा एग्जॉस्टेड, मैंने कहा छोड़ दो. तो समटाइम्स यू डोंट नीड टू रन टू दी लाइक एवरीथिंग योरसेल्फ. व्हाट यू कैन डू सिंपली, you can just ask them to give some piece of information. Like if you have relied onto something, आप बोल रहे हो डिफरेंस है, then you should have some kind of basic information, and that's why you are saying so you give me the information. So many times आपका ऐसे भी ड्रॉप हो सकता है कि इनको इन्फॉर्मेशन मिली नहीं, उनको खुद ही नहीं पता कहाँ से आ रही है. राइट, so that can also be the scenario. देन 74 के अब तो बहुत कॉमन ही हो गया है कि 74 के लिए किसी का 2 या 3 का डिफरेंस हो गया 74, ठीक है, किसी का कुछ उनसे 73 से मिस हो गया, उनका टाइमलाइन एक्सीड हो गया तो 74. सो व्हाट आई बिलीव पर्सनली दैट all of the notice which are being issued under section 74, at least 80-85% notices will drop at the level of criminal, because they are not properly drafted, they don't have the proper allegations, they don't have any grounds in their notices itself, they don't have any evidences attached to it. So all of the cases where they just issued the 74 notice because 73 was time barred, most of those notices will drop at the level of tribunal. Up to appeal to thoda kam hi umeed hai, but tribunal pe we can get a fair chance for that. So to be honest, this topic is actually too vast that even 2 or 3 hours will be less for it, because there's a lot of
Shaifaly ji, we have some questions
Yes, sir.
which is written in chat box. And Neha ji, please take the question.
Yes. Thank you so much, CA Shaifaly ji, for that incredible, practical, insightful session on handling GST notices and litigations. And I'm sure all the participants are living with much more clarity and confidence in dealing with the notices and litigations. Let's have some questions from our viewers. There is a question from Rahul Malhotra. While filing ITR, no, this is the question from this is. No. Yes, there is a question from Amit Surana. No notice issued for difference in 2A and 3B under section 74, not in 73, as section 73 time limit is over for 2019 and 20. Does notice is valid or can be questioned?
It should definitely be questioned, but the adjudicating authority itself doesn't have power to shift the 74 notice to 73, but at the appellate level, if the appeal is honest enough, genuine enough, and not biased, so they can definitely shift it to the 73. But adjudication level पे वो नहीं कर सकते, उनको right ही नहीं है. Appeal पे they have the right, they can shift it to 73 back.
मैम बट यू सेड दैट वो शिफ्ट कर देंगे, बट 73 का तो टाइम ही लैप्स हो चुका है.
हाँ, so ये बड़ा एक इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक है. 73 is now time lapse, right? So अथॉरिटी जब उसको शिफ्ट कर दिया है तब वो डेफिनेटली टाइम लैप्स ही रहेगा. बट if in these kind of cases, if we approach the high court, तो जनरली व्हाट हैपेंस, हाई कोर्ट का अप्रोच करने का हमें बेनिफिट होता है, बट ये पर्टिकुलर केसेस ऐसे हैं कि हमें हाई कोर्ट का अप्रोच करने का उल्टा नुकसान होगा. Because if you will see, there was a recent judgment where the High Court said it dropped the notice that it should not be in 74. It dropped the notice, or maybe some for some technical defect, but it gave the extra time of 1 week to the department to reissue the notice, right? So now one very important difference we are required to understand: appeal and tribunal, being the statutory court, they cannot give any relief to any taxpayer or the department which is beyond what is written in law itself, right? But court can do that. So जब हम 26 में हम रिट लेके जाते हैं तो क्या होता है कि कोर्ट एज ए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कोर्ट काम कर रहा है, नॉट एज ए स्टैट्यूटरी कोर्ट. सो वो रिलीफ भी दे सकते हैं जो लॉ में कहीं लिखी नहीं है, इन दी होल CGST कहीं नहीं लिखा, बट दैट कोर्ट कैन गिव द रिलीफ. सो जहां पे मेरा ऐसा केस बने कि जहां पे मेरे को लग रहा है कि कोर्ट में जाने का मुझे नुकसान होगा, क्योंकि बीइंग ए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कोर्ट वो तो 1 हफ्ते का टाइम दे देंगे कि अच्छा 1 हफ्ते में आप दोबारा कर लो, बट बीइंग अ स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी abided by what is written in the statute itself, the appellant tribunal cannot do it. तो ऐसे केस में मेरे को जनरल रूप से जाने का बेनिफिट है.
Ma'am, there is one more question from Rahul Malhotra. Cross examination is possible in section 74 cases.
Yes, and whenever you are drafting the reply under 74 cases, you should always ask for the cross examination, and you will be even luckier अगर डिपार्टमेंट नहीं दे रहा है आपको, because it will weaken their case, right? So we should always demand for the cross examination.
Ma'am, there is one more question from Mohammed Sohaib. Recorded statement can be retracted, but question is what is the time limit and where to submit the retraction letter?
This very important question. It's very good question, Shoaib ji. So first of all, there is no fixed time limit in the law. Reason being that it is not something coming from the law. क्योंकि लॉ ने तो ऐसा कहीं लिखा ही नहीं कि आप रिट्रैक्ट करो, तो इसलिए उसने कोई टाइम लिमिट भी नहीं लिखी. रिट्रैक्ट तो हम कर रहे हैं, एंड अगेन ये हम इसलिए नहीं कर रहे कि CGST एक्ट में कहीं हमें राइट दिया गया है. ये मेरे फंडामेंटल राइट है कि मुझसे फोर्स करके कुछ दिया गया है तो मुझसे वो चीज को मैं अपोज करूं. ठीक है, अब इसमें टाइम लिमिट की बात आएगी तो वो डाइविल से जैसे कॉन्डोनेशन ऑफ डिले है ना कि अलग अलग केस पे डिपेंड करता है, इसमें भी टाइम लिमिट अलग अलग केस पे डिपेंड करती है कि अब टाइम लिमिट के लिए अब आप अपना ग्राउंड भी क्या लेते हो, वो भी इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल, लाइक वी गॉट अ पर्टिकुलर केस वेयर इन द नोटिस वॉज इशूड in 2024, that is 5th of August 2024, which was the last date for issuing the notice, like for 74. So the whole rate thing was conducted in 2020, but they waited for 4 years to issue the notice. तो स्टेटमेंट जो रेड हुआ, स्टेटमेंट जो कुछ लेना था उन्होंने तभी लिया, ठीक है. और फिर 3-4 साल तक उन्होंने कुछ नहीं किया, मतलब आईटी से कुछ रिवर्स कर दिया होगा टैक्स पेयर ने. फिर इन 2024, क्योंकि क्या था कि जितने भी इस तरीके के केसेस थे उस दिन क्या हुआ, जो 4th of August था 2024, उन्होंने सॉफ्टवेयर से सबके DRC1 इशू किए, तो उनका भी हो गया. तो यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन ये होता है कि अब क्या मैं 4 साल बाद अपनी स्टेटमेंट रिट्रैक्ट कर सकती हूँ? ठीक, यहाँ तो 4 साल हो गए ना, ये 4 साल बाद जाके आप रिट्रैक्ट कर सकते हो. द कोर्ट विल आस्क कि आप 4 साल से कहाँ थे, बट व्हाट आई बिलीव, इफ वी गिव द प्रॉपर रीजन वी कैन एक्चुअली रिट्रैक्ट. व्हाई? देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन सरेंडर एंड एडमिशन. We are admitting some facts and we don't understand its whole repercussion. Whereas while we surrender something, हम जब खुद को surrender करते हैं, हम बयान देते हैं, इकबालिया बयान जिसको बोलते हैं, there we are accepting the guilt. But when we are giving the statement or we are admitting some facts, so we are just telling the some facts without understanding the repercussion of those facts, right? So what I will
सॉरी
say,
शिफाली जी मैम, वॉइस नेटवर्क इशू है आपका, वॉइस इज नॉट वर्क.
I don't understand last कहाँ तक सुन पाए
No,
थे आप?
it's okay, शेफाली जी, इधर क्लियर है. प्लीज
Yes,
आप
yes.
अपना चेक कीजिए.
जी जी
Your voice is clear, Shaifaly.
जी. So now okay, let me get back to that. So now after 4 years, what I will say, that you took my statement 4 years back, but you never issued me a notice. जब तक आपने नोटिस नहीं इशू किया, मेरे ग्राउंड्स फिक्स नहीं किए, मुझे कैसे पता चलेगा कि मेरी स्टेटमेंट का मेरे ऊपर क्या इम्पैक्ट होने वाला है? So it was only after you fixed the grounds and used my statement, I was being able to understand the real repercussion of that statement. So that can be retracted later on also. But I will say, मैं कोई आपको hard and fast rule नहीं बता सकती हूँ, मतलब ऐसा कुछ फिक्स टाइम लिमिट नहीं है. बट अगर आप लेट कर रहे हैं देन यू शुड कम अप विद सम रीजन कि लेट मेरा क्यों हो गया, किस रीजन से हो गया, मुझे अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं थी, या मैंने अगेन आपको बोला कि क्योंकि मैंने एडजुडिकेशन करते हुए आपने नोटिस बाद में इशू किया, तो आपने ग्राउंड्स ही मुझे बाद में दिए हैं. आपने मुझे स्टेटमेंट की कॉपी ही मेरे को तब दी जब नोटिस आया कि आपकी स्टेटमेंट की ये कॉपी है, उसके बेसिस पे आपने कुछ ग्राउंड्स बनाए. सो वी कैन टेक दैट पर्टिकुलर थिंग. अगेन इट इज अ मैटर ऑफ क्राफ्ट हुई, या आप लिटिगेशन क्राफ्ट में किस तरीके से अपने पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू वहां पे रखते हैं. अगेन आई फिक्स रूल नहीं है इसका, कोई टाइम लिमिट लॉ में, किसी भी लॉ में कहीं पे फिक्स नहीं है इसके लिए.
Okay, I think all the participants has got their answers, and if someone has left out, so you can share your queries to you can share or you can mail your queries. We'll definitely share Shaifaly's opinion.
Definitely answer them.
Yeah.
Any queries required, you can send me. I will definitely answer them.
Since we are running out of time, and yes, CA Shaifaly ji, very much thank you. And your experience and depth of knowledge have made today's session valuable, extremely valuable. The FIEA team would like to present a sweet and small gesture of appreciation for your time and patience, a small token of love from the team FIEA. I would like to share. Just yeah, I hope it is visible. I hope it is visible to you.
Yes, Neha ji.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
The hard copy of it would be shared to you soon.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
And Yogesh ji would join us.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Shaifaly ji, for the today's session on GST litigation. And thank you from the all FIEA members, from the side of all FIEA members. And hopefully we will definitely do again more seminars on GST with you. So we end here. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks, Abhishek ji. Thanks, Yogesh ji.
Thank you, Shaifaly ji,
ma'am.
for your time. So nice of you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you all participants. Thank you.